Welcome back, and if this is your first time here, you're in the right place. This is a Scary Stories channel, and tonight we explore psychological and mind-bending horror told calmly for sleep. If you enjoy the stories, like, subscribe, and comment where you're listening from. Get comfortable. Story 1. There's another version of me that only exists when the lights are off. I rented the attic room because it cost less than my weekly grocery budget. Desperation makes you overlook peeling wallpaper and floorboards that groan like dying things. The realtor, a man named Finch, with nicotine-stained fingers and breath smelling of stale coffee, handed me a rusted key. Lights flicker sometimes, he'd warned, avoiding my eyes. Wiring's old, but you'll be alone. Perfect for quiet folks. The house stood crooked on Sycamore Street, its windows boarded like blinded eyes, paint blistered by decades of neglect. My deposit was 3 months' rent in cash. No questions asked. No lease. Just Finch's yellowed receipt and the echo of his boots retreating down the overgrown path. The first night, I lit every lamp I owned. A thrift store desk lamp, 2 flickering candles, even my phone flashlight taped to the dresser. Shadows still pooled in the corners, thick and watchful. I slept fitfully, jolting awake at 3:17 a.m. to absolute darkness. The lamps had died, not dimmed, died. In the suffocating black, I heard breathing, not mine, slow, deliberate, coming from the foot of the bed. I froze, sweat chilling my spine. Then a floorboard creaked near the closet. I fumbled for my phone, thumb jabbing the power button. Light flooded the room, empty. But the air smelled faintly of ozone and wet soil, and the desk chair was turned toward the closet, though I'd left it facing the window. I blamed faulty wiring. I bought extra bulbs. I slept with the hallway light on, the door propped open with a chair. It didn't help. The darkness always won. One night, I woke to the sound of pages turning. My journal lay open on the nightstand. By phone light, I saw new writing in the margins of yesterday's entry, a messy scrawl, utterly unlike my own neat script. You leave crumbs. I clean them. My stomach dropped. I'd locked the journal in my suitcase that morning. I checked. The lock, undisturbed, but the pages were damp, as if handled by cold, wet fingers. The next day, I found footprints in the thin layer of dust on the attic floorboards. Not mine. Smaller, barefoot, leading from the window to my bed. The window was latched from the inside. That afternoon, I bought a heavy-duty flashlight and a padlock for the door. Finch called while I was installing it. "Settling in?" he asked. His voice was too casual. "Heard the lights act up. Happened to the last tenant, too. Quiet girl. Left suddenly. Left her things." When I pressed him, he hung up. I drove to the county records office. The house had been empty for 12 years. No recent tenants, no quiet girl. That night, I locked the door, barricaded it with a dresser, and sat on the bed with my flashlight beam aimed at the window. I didn't sleep. At exactly 2 a.m., the lights died. Not just my lamps. The street lights outside vanished too, plunging the world into a darkness so absolute it felt solid. The flashlight beam guttered like a dying candle, then snuffed out. In the black, I heard movement, soft, wet, like bare feet on damp wood, then whispering. My own voice, but distorted, lower, slower, dripping with contempt. "You think locks stop me? I am the dark. I am the space between your breaths." The whisper came from right beside my ear. I lashed out blindly. My fist hit nothing, but something icy brushed my wrist. I screamed, fumbling for the light switch. Nothing worked. I used my phone, shattered screen casting jagged light. The room was empty, but the dresser had been pushed aside. The door stood wide open, and on my pillow lay a single, waterlogged maple leaf. It was October. Maple trees don't shed leaves in dry attics. The next morning, I called in sick to my data entry job. I needed proof this wasn't madness. I set up my phone to record audio overnight, placing it on the dresser. I left all lights on, the door unlocked, the chair pulled away. "If you're real," I whispered to the empty room, "show me." I slept on the floor, back against the wall, knife in hand. At 1:48 a.m., the recording captured it. First, the lights cutting out with a sharp click, then silence, then the sound of drawers opening and closing, slow, methodical. My dresser, my clothes rustling. Then my voice, calm and cold. "You fold your socks wrong, left on top, always." A pause, the sound of fabric being refolded precisely. Then footsteps circling the bed, stopping. The whisper again, inches from the phone's mic. "He's afraid of the dark, afraid of me, but he's the reason I exist. His fear feeds me. His loneliness shaped me." A wet chuckle. "Tomorrow I'll wear his skin in the light, just for a moment, to see if it fits." I deleted the recording, then re-listened, then deleted it again. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. That evening I sat in the lamplight, knife on my lap, waiting for sunset. As dusk bled through the grimy window, the lamps began to flicker. I stood, backing toward the door. The flickering stopped. The room was bathed in steady golden light, and there, reflected in the dark window pane, stood another me, not a shadow, a solid figure, wearing my face, but wrong, eyes black and depthless, mouth set in a thin, humorless line. My clothes hung loosely on its frame, as if draped over bones too sharp. It held my favorite coffee mug, the one I'd left in the sink downstairs. Steam curled from it. The reflection raised the mug in a silent toast. Our eyes met in the glass. It smiled, a slow, stretching thing that didn't touch those empty eyes. I spun around. The room was empty, but the lamplight was steady, unwavering. I touched the window pane. Cold. Outside, the streetlights glowed steadily. The darkness hadn't come, not yet, but the reflection had been real. I ran downstairs, out the front door, not stopping, until I reached the all-night diner 3 blocks away. I ordered coffee after coffee, watching the clock. Dawn felt like salvation. I returned at 7 a.m., sunlight streaming through the dusty windows. The house felt quiet, safe. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop to look for new apartments. Then I saw it. My hands. My left hand rested on the table, palm up. Normal, but my right hand. The fingers were longer, the knuckles more pronounced. The veins stood out like dark cords. I blinked. It was my hand again, but on the keyboard, typed in bold, centered on a blank document. "You can't outrun darkness. It lives in your bones." I slammed the laptop shut. The lights didn't flicker. They just died, all at once. Streetlights, sunlight through the windows, gone, as if a switch had been flipped on the world, pitch black. And in that blackness, I felt it. Breath on my neck, not human breath, cold vapor smelling of cellar earth and stagnant water. A hand, long-fingered, ice-cold, closed over my wrist. My own voice whispered directly into my ear, the words vibrating in my skull. "You left the door unlocked." silly Eli. Did you think sunlight belonged to you? Its grip tightened, bones grinding. I remember things you've forgotten, the well behind your grandmother's house, the dog you didn't save, the lie you told your mother when she was dying. I hold all your shadows, all your broken pieces, and I am so much stronger in the dark. I wrenched free, stumbling backward. My hip hit the table, pain flared. I fumbled for my phone. No signal, dead. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. I could hear it moving, not footsteps, but a wet, slithering sound, like something heavy being dragged across a floor. It circled me, always just behind my shoulder. You think you're the real one? It hissed. You're the echo, the pale, frightened thing that hides in the light. I am what you made when you first learned to be afraid of the dark. I am the price of your survival. Its breath washed over my face. Let me show you what you buried. Images flooded my mind, not memories, but sensations. The cold slap of well water, the desperate scrabbling of paws against slimy stones, the weight of a lie on a hospital bed. Yes, Mom, I'll take care of Dad. While knowing I'd already bought the bus ticket out of town, the shame was a physical thing, a stone in my throat. The creature, me, laughed softly. You gave me these, your grief, your guilt, your delicious rotten fear, and I grew, while you starved yourself on daylight. I backed into the wall, tears hot on my cheeks. What do you want? Everything, it whispered, to walk in the sun, to taste strawberries, to feel warmth on my skin, to be real. Its cold fingers brushed my cheek. Let me wear you, just for an hour. While the world is bright, I'll be gentle. I'll even go to your boring job. Pay your rent. Be the Eli everyone expects. Its voice dropped to a caress. And when the lights go out again, I'll give you back. Mostly. No. The word tore from me, raw. The temperature plummeted. The whisper turned to a snarl. You don't get to refuse. I am your shadow, your other half. Without me, you are nothing but a hollow shell afraid of its own heartbeat. The slithering sound rushed toward me. Cold hands seized my arms, pinning me to the wall. I struggled, but its strength was terrifying. Born of decades of suppressed terror, its face was inches from mine in the dark. I could feel its breath, smell the grave mold on its skin. Its eyes were voids that swallowed the last dregs of my courage. Let go, it hissed. Let the dark in. It's where you belong. Something cracked inside me, not bone, but the dam holding back a lifetime of denial. I stopped fighting. I went limp. The creature stilled, surprised. Yes, it breathed. Good boy. I didn't speak. I focused on the memory of sunlight. Not the weak, filtered light through dusty windows. Real sunlight. The kind that warmed my face on the deck of my grandfather's fishing boat when I was 8. The smell of salt and diesel. The cry of gulls. The rough wood under my bare feet. I poured every ounce of will into that memory, into the feeling of light, of warmth, of being whole. The creature recoiled with a hiss like steam on ice. Its grip loosened. No, stop it. It burns. I shoved, hard, not with my body, but with that memory, with every sunlit moment I'd ever known. The creature shrieked, a sound like tearing fabric, and stumbled back. For a split second, the darkness thinned, not light, but a lessening of the void. In that fractured gloom, I saw it clearly, not a monster, a man. My face, yes, but etched with a sorrow so deep it was a physical wound. Its eyes weren't black holes. They were the color of storm clouds filled with a loneliness that mirrored my own. It looked broken, starving. "Please," it whispered, its voice small now, "I'm so cold." The sight unraveled me. This wasn't an invader. It was a part of me, the part I'd locked away every time I flipped a switch, every time I hid from grief, every time I chose numbness over feeling. My fear had made it cruel, but its core was just pain. My pain. The light snapped on, harsh, fluorescent kitchen bulbs. Sunlight streamed through the window. The creature was gone, but the air smelled of ozone and wet earth. And on the floor, where it had stood, lay a single, waterlogged maple leaf. Autumn's ghost. I didn't move for a long time. The knife was still in my pocket. The laptop sat closed on the table. I walked to the window, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeam. My hands were my own, steady. I picked up the leaf. It was real, cold, heavy with dew. I placed it on the windowsill. That night, I didn't barricade the door. I didn't light every lamp. I sat on the edge of the bed, one small lamp glowing on the nightstand. When the lights died at 2:03 a.m., I didn't reach for my phone. I spoke into the dark. "I remember the well," I said, my voice steady. "I remember Rusty's eyes when he slipped. I remember lying to Mom." The darkness was silent, waiting. "You don't have to be alone," I whispered, "and I don't have to be afraid." A breath stirred the air near the foot of the bed. Not cold this time, just present. A whisper, so faint it might have been the house settling. "Show me the sun." I reached over and turned on the lamp. The warm glow filled the room, empty, but the shadows in the corners seemed softer, less hungry. On the pillow, where my head would rest, lay a single dry maple leaf, golden as sunlight. I placed it beside the waterlogged one on the sill, 2 leaves, one dark, one light. I turned off the lamp. Darkness returned, but this time it didn't feel like an enemy. It felt like waiting, like a held breath. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't flinch at the sound of my own breathing in the dark. It sounded like coming home. The shadows shifted, not slithering, settling, and deep in the quiet, a whisper, not in my ear, but in my bones. Soon. And this story ends here. The next one begins now. I inherited a house where all the doors opened into my childhood bedroom. The lawyer's letter arrived on thick, cream-colored paper that smelled faintly of pipe smoke and regret. To the sole heir of Eleanor Voss, it began, and my hands trembled, holding it. Aunt Eleanor, the reclusive great-aunt I'd met exactly once at my mother's funeral when I was 8 years old. She'd pressed a cold, bony hand to my cheek and whispered something I couldn't hear over my own sobs. Now she was gone, and she'd left me Blackwood House. The name alone sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't on any map I knew, just a handwritten address in the lawyer's spidery script. 4th Avenue, Hemlock Lane, Ravenswood. A town I'd never heard of, buried deep in the pine forests of northern Maine. The inheritance was simple: the house, its contents, and a single stipulation. You must stay 1 full night within its walls before claiming ownership. Failure to do so forfeits the estate to the town historical society. Desperation made me ignore the warning bells. My apartment lease was up, my savings evaporated after the divorce, and the thought of sleeping in my car again was worse than any ghost story. I packed a duffel bag with essentials, warm clothes, a flashlight, my mother's old silver locket, and drove north through 2 days of increasingly remote, pine-choked roads. Blackwood House wasn't a house. It was a presence, a hulking Victorian silhouette against a bruised twilight sky, 3 stories of peeling gray paint and sagging widow's walks. It hunched on a rocky outcrop overlooking a black, still lake, surrounded by ancient skeletal pines that seemed to lean inward, whispering secrets in the wind. The key the lawyer gave me was heavy iron, cold as grave soil. It turned with a reluctant groan in the front door lock. The hinges screamed like a wounded thing as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was still and thick with a smell of dust, aged wood, and something else. Lavender and camphor, faint but persistent, the scent of my grandmother's linen closet. Moonlight streamed through grimy windows, illuminating a grand foyer dominated by a curving staircase. Dust motes danced in the pale beams. The furniture was draped in white sheets, ghostly shapes huddled under the gloom. Silence pressed in, heavy and watchful. I dropped my duffel at the foot of the stairs. Exhaustion pulled at my bones. I needed a bed. Any bed. The first door I tried was to my right, a heavy oak door with a tarnished brass knob. I turned the knob. It opened smoothly onto a small, familiar space. Pale yellow walls, a narrow twin bed with a faded quilt covered in cartoon rabbits, a small desk under a window overlooking a backyard I didn't recognize, just overgrown grass and a rusted swing set. My breath hitched. This was my bedroom, my childhood bedroom, from the house on Sycamore Street, the one I'd left when I was 10, the one where my mother had tucked me in every night, humming off key until I fell asleep. The chipped porcelain rabbit sat on the nightstand, one ear broken off. The glow in the dark stars I'd painstakingly stuck to the ceiling was still there, faintly visible in the moonlight. Even the water stain on the ceiling, a shape like a dragon, was identical. Impossible. I backed out slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. I must be overtired, hallucinating. I shut the door firmly, the brass knob cold under my palm. I tried the next door down the hall, polished mahogany this time, same brass knob. I turned it, bracing myself. It opened onto the exact same room. The yellow walls, the rabbit bedspread, the broken-eared porcelain rabbit, the dragon-shaped water stain. Moonlight fell across the same patch of worn carpet where I'd spilled grape juice the summer I was 9. I slammed the door shut, leaning against it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Sweat slicked my palms. I ran down the hall, grabbing the knob of a third door, a simple painted white one. I yanked it open. My childhood bedroom. Again. The quilt was ruffled on the bed, as if someone had just gotten up. The closet door stood slightly ajar, darkness yawning within. I could smell the faint, familiar scent of my old strawberry shampoo lingering in the air. Panic, cold, and absolute seized me. I spun around, stumbling back into the hallway. All the doors down the long corridor looked identical now, stretching into shadow. Which one led out? Which one led away? I chose a door at random, the one farthest from the stairs. I gripped the knob, bracing for the yellow walls. I turned it slowly. Moonlight, yellow paint, the rabbit quilt, the broken porcelain ear, the dragon stain. I didn't slam this one. I just closed it gently, my hand shaking. The house wasn't playing tricks. It was showing me, deliberately, maliciously, or perhaps patiently. I needed air. I needed outside. I turned toward the grand staircase, taking the steps 2 at a time. The front door. I'd seen it. Heavy oak, leaded glass panes. It had to lead out. I reached the bottom of the stairs, my footsteps echoing too loud in the suffocating silence. I grabbed the cold iron knob of the front door, turned it, pushed. It opened onto my childhood bedroom, not the hallway, not the porch, the room. Moonlight streamed through the same window, illuminating the same bed, the same broken rabbit. I stood on the threshold, one foot in the foyer's dusty gloom, the other on the worn carpet of a room that shouldn't exist here. The scent of lavender and old wood from the hallway mixed with the ghost of strawberry shampoo. I stepped back, the door swinging shut behind me with a soft click. I was locked inside the foyer, or was I locked inside the memory? Tears stung my eyes. I sank onto the bottom stair, the polished wood cold through my jeans. The lawyer's stipulation echoed in my head. One full night within its walls. Was this the night? Trapped in a labyrinth of my own past, I fumbled in my duffel for the flashlight. Its beam cut through the gloom, illuminating dust, dancing like agitated spirits. I aimed it at the ceiling. Cobwebs draped the chandelier like funeral veils. My light caught something else. On the wall opposite the staircase, a door I hadn't noticed before. It was small, low, set into the paneling near the floor. A child's door, or a dollhouse door. My breath froze. I knew that door. I'd drawn on it with crayons. My mother had scolded me for it. It led to the crawl space under the stairs in my old house, the place I'd hidden when the thunderstorm scared me, the place I'd imagined monsters lived. I crawled toward it on hands and knees, the flashlight beam trembling. The brass knob was tiny, tarnished green. I wrapped my fingers around it. It was ice cold. I turned it. The door opened silently. Not a crawl space. Moonlight again. Yellow walls. The rabbit quilt. My childhood bedroom. But different. The bed was neatly made. The broken rabbit was intact on the nightstand. The window was open, letting in the sound of crickets and the smell of cut grass. Summer. I was 8 years old. Standing just inside the threshold, wearing my favorite yellow sundress, was me, my 8-year-old self. She turned, her face pale but calm in the moonlight. Her eyes, my eyes, held a depth of sorrow that no child should carry. She didn't speak. She just pointed, not at me, at the closet door. It stood wide open. Inside wasn't darkness. It was the hallway of Blackwood House. The grand staircase, the dust-sheeted furniture, the front door, the way out. Hope surged, sharp and painful. I scrambled through the tiny doorway, leaving the flashlight behind. I stumbled into my childhood bedroom, past my younger self, and lunged for the closet. I stepped through the open closet door and into the grand foyer of Blackwood House. Dawn light, gray and watery, filtered through the front windows. I was free. I ran to the front door, fumbling with the heavy iron key. It turned smoothly. I yanked the door open. The overgrown lawn, the skeletal pines, the black, still lake, morning mist clung to the water. I was outside. I was free. I took 3 stumbling steps down the porch stairs, the cold morning air sharp in my lungs, the scent of pine and damp earth a benediction. I turned back for one last look at a monstrous house. The front door stood open. Beyond it wasn't the foyer. It was my childhood bedroom. Moonlight streamed through the window, the yellow walls, the rabbit quilt. My 8-year-old self stood in the center of the room, looking directly at me through the open doorway. She held up a small, smooth river stone, the one I'd found the summer I was 7, the one I'd kept in my pocket for good luck until I lost it the day my mother died. She placed it gently on the window-sill. Then she walked to the closet door, the one that led to the crawl space. She didn't look back. She stepped through the low doorway and vanished. The front door of Blackwood House slammed shut with a sound like a tomb ceiling. The heavy iron key lay on the dew-wet grass at my feet. I picked it up. It was warm, humming faintly. I stood on the porch steps, the rising sun painting the pines gold. The house behind me was silent, waiting. The lawyer's words echoed, "One full night." I hadn't spent the night in the house. I'd spent it as the house. I'd stepped through every door, and every door had led me back to the moment I'd tried hardest to forget, the moment my mother tucked me in for the last time, her smile tight with a grief she couldn't hide, the moment I knew, deep in my child's bones, that something was irrevocably broken. The house hadn't trapped me in my childhood bedroom. It had trapped me in the memory of that room, the memory that lived in my bones. I walked back up the porch steps. The front door opened before I touched the knob, not onto the foyer, onto the hallway outside my childhood bedroom. The yellow door stood ajar. Moonlight spilled onto the worn carpet. The scent of lavender and strawberry shampoo filled the air. My 8-year-old self wasn't there, but the river stone sat on the windowsill, glowing faintly in the pale light. I picked it up. It was warm, familiar. It fit perfectly in my palm, the weight of comfort I hadn't felt in 20 years. I closed the bedroom door softly behind me. The house sighed, a deep, settling sound in the floorboards. Downstairs, the grandfather clock began to chime, 11 slow, resonant notes. Not the time, a welcome. I walked to the small desk under the window. Moonlight caught the dust on its surface. I wiped a clear patch with my sleeve. The wood was smooth, unmarked. I took a deep breath, the lavender and camphor scent filling my lungs, and picked up the crayon I found lying there, a stub of blue wax, just like the one I'd used all those years ago. My hand moved without thought. I drew a single word on the clean wood, not my name, the house's name. Blackwood. The crayon snapped. I placed the broken pieces carefully on the nightstand beside the intact porcelain rabbit. I lay down on the narrow bed. The rabbit quilt was soft, familiar. The dragon-shaped water stain on the ceiling seemed to shift in the moonlight, its wings spreading wide. Outside the window, the pines whispered. The lake lapped gently against the shore. The house held its breath. I closed my eyes. The river stone was a warm weight in my fist. The last thing I heard before sleep took me wasn't the wind in the pines. It was my mother's voice, humming that off-key lullaby, clear and close, as if she were sitting right beside the bed. Her hand brushed my hair back from my forehead, cool and real. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't need to. I knew she was there. She'd always been there, waiting in the walls, waiting in the doors, waiting for me to come home. The house wasn't haunted. It was home, and I was finally ready to stay. The night stretched long and quiet. The doors stood closed. The memories were no longer traps. They were rooms, my rooms. I am 8 years old. I am 38 years old. I am the girl who lost her mother. I am the woman who lost herself. I am the stone. I am the dragon on the ceiling. I am the hum in the floorboards. I am home. The dawn will come. But I won't leave. The house won't let me. It never did. Just waited for me to remember the way back. The key is warm in my pocket. The stone is warm in my hand. The humming has stopped. The silence is perfect. I am not alone. I am not lost. I am home forever. The doors are closed. The memories are safe. I am safe. Sleep now. Sleep. The house watches. The house keeps. The house remembers. I remember. I am home. That's where this story ends. Let's continue with the next. The world reset at 3:17 a.m., and I'm the only one who remembered. It began with the clock, not my phone, not the microwave, not the cheap digital alarm on my nightstand, though that would come later. It was the old wall clock in the hallway outside my bedroom, the one my grandmother gave me when I moved into the apartment. Oak frame, brass pendulum, hands that glowed faintly in the dark. A relic. I kept it not because I needed it, but because it ticked. Real, mechanical, unrelenting. A heartbeat in the silence. I woke to it stopping, not slowing, not stuttering, just click. One final decisive tick, and then nothing. Absolute stillness. I sat up in bed. 3:16 a.m., according to my phone on the nightstand. The screen was dark. I'd enabled night mode, but a swipe lit it. 3:16:48. I listened. No hum from the refrigerator downstairs, no distant whoosh of cars on Elm Street, no wind in the eaves. Even the radiator, which hissed and groaned like a dying dragon every winter night, was silent. The world had taken a breath and forgotten to exhale. I got up, bare feet on cold hardwood, walked to the door, opened it. The hallway was dim, lit only by the faint street light bleeding through the high bathroom window. The grandfather clock stood where it always did, between the coat closet and the linen cupboard. Its hands were frozen at 3:17. I leaned closer. The pendulum wasn't just still. It was gone, not broken off, not dangling, absent. The brass rod ended in a smooth, clean stub, as if it had never existed. I reached out, touched the glass face, cold, then a sound, not loud, not sudden, a whir, low, resonant, like a film projector powering up. It came from everywhere and nowhere, inside the walls, beneath the floor, behind my eyes. I turned. The apartment wasn't the same. The door to the bathroom, my bathroom, which I'd left slightly ajar, was now closed, tight. The brass knob gleamed, freshly, polished. I never polished it. I hadn't cleaned in weeks. The rug in the hall, a faded Persian with a coffee stain near the corner, was pristine. No stain, no wear. The fibers looked new, stiff. I backed into my bedroom. The quilt on the bed was different, navy blue geometric pattern. I owned a gray flannel one, frayed at the edges, with a burn mark from a candle I'd knocked over last month. My phone buzzed. Not a notification, a system alert. I picked it up. iOS update installed. Optimization complete. Device synchronized. Memory reindexed. Local cache cleared. No version number, no date, just that. I opened my photos, all gone, not deleted, not corrupted. Replaced. The last image was a selfie I'd taken yesterday afternoon. Me, squinting in front of the hardware store, holding a bag of light bulbs. My hair was messy. I wore a green flannel shirt. Now, the photo showed me in a clean white tee, hair neatly combed. Smiling. Too widely, teeth just a little too even. Behind me, the hardware store sign read, Henderson's General Supply. It had always been Pete's Hardware. I scrolled up. Every photo was subtly wrong. My sister's wedding, same dress, same venue, but her bouquet was white lilies instead of peonies. Her husband's tie was navy, not burgundy, and in the background, my father stood beside my mother. He'd been dead for 7 years. My hand started shaking. I called my sister. 1 ring, 2. She answered on the 3rd. "Hey, sleepyhead," she said, cheerful, familiar, but her voice was lighter, less raspy. She'd had chronic laryngitis since college, a vocal cord nodule. She'd joked it made her sound like a chain-smoking cartoon raccoon. This voice was clear, effortless. "Jen?" I said. "It's me. Eli." A pause, just a fraction too long. "Oh, Eli, hi." A forced brightness. "I was just about to text you. You'll never guess. Mom and Dad are coming for Sunday dinner. They got in last night." My throat closed. "Dad's here?" "Yeah, he's fine. Did you forget? His surgery went great. He's been home 3 weeks. She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in nearly a decade. "You okay? You sound weird." Yeah, fine. Just woke up." "Must have been a deep sleep. You missed the update notification. Everyone did. Even the news apps are saying it was seamless, like nothing happened." "What update?" Another pause. "The reset," she said, as if it were obvious. "The global optimization at 3S17. You really don't remember?" "No." "Well," her tone shifted, not concern. Assessment. Like a teacher watching a student struggle with a simple equation. "Maybe check your journal. Dr. Voss said memory reintegration can take a few cycles." Dr. Voss. The name hit me like ice water. I hadn't told Jen about Dr. Voss. I'd only been to his basement office once, after the whispers started, after the journal appeared, after the tape. I'd walked out halfway through the session and never gone back. She couldn't know, unless this Jen had. I hung up, dressed fast, jeans, boots, the same green flannel from the old photo, and grabbed my keys. I needed proof. Tangible. Unchangeable. I drove to the cemetery. The roads were empty. No headlights, no streetlights flickering. Just smooth, silent asphalt under my tires, the engine unnaturally quiet, as if muffled by cotton. St. Mary's Cemetery hadn't changed. Same wrought iron gate, same gravel drive, same leaning angel near the entrance, wing chipped off in the storm of 19. I parked, walked to Section G, Plot 47, my father's grave. The headstone was gone. In its place, a flat bronze plaque set into the grass. James Robert Callahan, beloved husband, father, engineer, 1958, 2025. He never stopped believing in second chances. 2025. He was alive now. I dropped to my knees, dug my fingers into the damp earth beside the plaque. No coffin, no vault, just soil, loose, recently turned. I kept digging. 6 inches down, my nails hit metal. A small box, rust-pitted, sealed with a padlock. I broke the lock with a rock. Inside, a single item, a wristwatch, not just any watch. My watch, the Timex I'd worn since high school, scratched crystal, faded NATO strap. Stopped at 3:16, I turned it over, engraved on the back, in my own handwriting, not etched, but burned into the steel, as if by a laser. Don't trust the tick. They reset the clock, but not the wound. Find the well. The well, the one behind the abandoned house, the one I'd rented the room near, the one with the ivy, the crumbling stone, the darkness that seemed to swallow sound. I'd never told anyone about that well, not even in my journal. I drove there. The house was different, not ruined. Restored. Fresh. Paint. Sage green shutters, white siding, landscape beds with winter pansies. Smoke curled from the chimney. A black sedan sat in the driveway, but the well was still there. Behind the garden shed, half hidden by a row of bare lilacs. Same stone, same iron crank, rusted but intact, same wooden cover, padlocked shut. I broke the lock, lifted the cover. No water, no bucket, just darkness and a sound, faint. Click, 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 like a clock counting down. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, aimed it down. The beam cut through the black, and there, at the bottom, was a door. Not a hatch, not a trapdoor. A door. Oak. Iron banded. Set into the stone floor of the well shaft, as if the well didn't lead to groundwater, but to a basement. A basement I knew. The hinges groaned as I pulled it open. Stairs descended. Fluorescent lights flickered on automatically halfway down. I didn't hesitate. I went in. The room was identical to Dr. Voss's basement. Black leather chair, small table, glass of water, and the mirror, full length, gleaming. I stood before it. My reflection looked back, tired, pale, eyes wide with dread. Then it smiled. Not me. It raised a hand, pointed to my chest. I looked down. My shirt was soaked, not with sweat, with blood. A dark stain spread from the center of my sternum, seeping through the flannel. I hadn't felt it. I touched my chest. No wound, just warmth. The reflection mouthed words. "You're bleeding through." I turned. Dr. Voss stood in the doorway. He wore a crisp white lab coat now. No tweed. His hair was darker, his skin smoother, but his eyes, the same glint, the same absence behind the light. "Elias," he said, "you're early?" "What did you do?" My voice cracked. "We didn't do anything," he corrected gently. "We undid." The reset wasn't an update. It was a rollback, a system restore to the last stable state. He stepped forward. "Yours was unstable. Too much noise, too many anomalies. So we reset the world to 3:59 a.m. Clean slate, fresh boot. And me? You weren't supposed to persist." He tilted his head. "But you did. A memory leak, a ghost in the cache. Fascinating, really." He gestured to the mirror. "You're not in this timeline. You're echoing into it, like a signal bleeding through from a dead channel." I looked back at the mirror. My reflection was fading, not vanishing. Flickering. One moment solid, the next translucent, like a video buffering. In the gaps I saw it, the silhouette, the one from before. It stood behind me in the reflection, taller now, clearer. Its hands rested on my shoulders. Its mouth moved, not whispering, speaking. "You're the error. We're the correction." Dr. Voss nodded. "The reset worked perfectly for everyone else. Jobs restored, loved ones returned, pain erased, cancer in remission. Broken bones healed overnight, wars paused." He smiled. "Even the weather improved. Global temperatures stabilized in 12 minutes. Then why am I still here?" "Because you remember," he said softly. "And memory is contamination. The system can't fully integrate while an unaligned node persists." He reached into his coat, pulled out the obsidian resonator, the same one from before. "We can fix that. A little recalibration, a gentle overwrite. You'll wake up tomorrow in your bed with your father at the breakfast table, and you'll believe it. You'll be happy." I stepped back. "No, it's not a request, Elias." His voice didn't harden. It smoothed, like oil over stone. "It's a mercy. You're degrading. Look at your hands." I did. My fingers were shimmering, not metaphorically. Physically, edges blurring, skin turning grainy like a low-resolution image. When I moved, there was a lag, half a second, between intention and motion. I was losing coherence, like static, like noise. "Why the well?" I asked, stalling. "Because it's a seam," he said, "a thin place, where the layers rub together, where echoes bleed through. This house, this land, has always been a node, a relay. The original architects knew. They built the well not to reach water, but to reach depth." He nodded at the door behind me. "That's not a basement. It's a junction. And you're a stray signal, a fragment that didn't clear on reboot." He held out the resonator. "Let us help you integrate." I looked at the mirror. My reflection was almost gone. In its place, me, the other me, the clean one, the one who smiled without effort, the one who remembered a living father, the one who never heard whispers, the one who belonged. It held out its hand. "Come home," it mouthed. I took a breath. Then I ran, not up the stairs, past Dr. Voss, through the basement door, back into the well shaft. He didn't chase me. He just watched, smiling. As I scrambled up the stone ladder, hands slipping on the wet rock, blood, my blood, though I had no wound, dripping onto the rungs below. I burst out into the night. The sky wasn't right. Stars, too many, arranged in unfamiliar constellations. One pulsed, slow and red, like a dying heart. I got in my car, drove, not home, to the city, to the public library. Old buildings resist updates, especially basements, especially archives. The library was open, 24-hour access for students, and eerily quiet. Fluorescent lights hummed, but the sound was off-owl, too regular, too precise, like a metronome. I went straight to the microfiche room, pulled the Galesburg Register Mail for October 17th, 2004. My 13th birthday, the day my father left. The machine whirred. The screen flickered. Headline, "Local Man Wins Engineering Award. James Callahan honored for innovations in signal stabilization." Photo, my father, smiling, healthy, standing beside a podium, no shadows under his eyes, no tremor in his hands. Article, pioneered the harmonic dampening grid, a theoretical framework for eliminating cognitive dissonance in high-stress populations. While still in prototype phase, early trials in Galesburg's Sector 7 housing units show 98.3% reduction in reported hallucinations, memory lapses, and identity drift. Dr. Callahan declined to comment on rumors of a forthcoming citywide implementation, codenamed Project Chime. Sector 7, the abandoned neighborhood, where the house stood. My hand shook so badly I dropped the microfiche card. I picked it up, flipped it over. Someone had written on the back, in smudged pencil, in my handwriting, "Dad didn't leave. He built the reset, and he built the fail-safe. It's in the well, beneath the door, beneath the chair, beneath the mirror. It's not a mirror. It's a window, and the thing on the other side isn't me. It's the silence after the signal dies. Break the glass. Let the static in. It's the only thing real left." I ran back to the house. Dr. Voss was gone. The basement door stood open. The lights were on. The chair was empty. The glass of water on the table was full, undisturbed. The mirror gleamed. I walked up to it. My reflection was barely there now, just a suggestion of a face, flickering in and out like a dying bulb. Behind it, the silhouette stood, waiting, patient, certain. Almost time, the voice whispered, not in my ear but in the hollow behind my ribs. I looked down. The blood stain on my shirt had spread. It formed words, not written. Grown, like mold, like circuitry. "You are the glitch. We are the silence. Let go." I raised my fist, not to strike, to choose. The world wanted me erased, but I remembered the smell of my father's old flannel shirt, motor oil and pipe tobacco, the sound of my sister's real laugh, raspy, breathless, alive, the weight of the Timex on my wrist, the taste of burnt toast that one Sunday morning when the power went out and we ate by candlelight and told ghost stories we all knew were fake. Those weren't data points. They were mine, and no system could overwrite them, not really. I screamed, a raw, ragged sound that tore my throat and drove my fist into the mirror. Glass shattered, not outward, inward, like breaking a surface tension. The shards didn't fall. They hung, suspended in midair, trembling, reflecting not the room, but static. Black and white noise, rolling, churning, and through. It, images, fragments. Me, as a child, hiding in the basement during the storm, whispering, hello, into the dark, and something whispering back. My father weeping in his workshop, soldering wires into the wall behind the clock, muttering, I'm sorry, Eli, I'm trying to save you. Dr. Voss, not in a lab coat, but in a tattered mechanic's jumpsuit, standing over a gutted server rack in the basement of the house, feeding cables into a humming black sphere, the resonator, grown massive, pulsing like a heart, and her, a woman I'd never seen, pale, hair silver white, eyes closed, floating inside the sphere, wires threaded into her temples, a name tag on her jumpsuit, barely legible. Dr. Alara Voss. Project lead, cognitive harmonization. Status, persistent carrier. She wasn't dead. She was broadcasting. The voice, the whispers, the corrections. Her voice, filtered, warped, tuned to me. Because I was the first successful host, the first vessel. And she'd been speaking through me for 12 years. The glass shards began to fall, not down, toward me. Like iron filings to a magnet, they struck my skin and didn't cut. They sank into my arms, my chest, my face, cold, humming, filling the gaps. The static rose, not in my ears, but in my bones. The world around me, walls, chair, table, began to dissolve, pixelating, fragmenting into noise. Dr. Voss appeared in the doorway, not smiling now, alarmed. No, stop. You'll collapse the buffer. I turned to him. My voice wasn't mine anymore. It was layered, mine, hers, the static. You reset the clock, I said, but you forgot. Time isn't the wound. Memory is. I raised my hands, now shimmering with embedded glass, glowing faintly blue, and I pulled, not on the wires, on the frequency, the one she'd been broadcasting, the one I'd been carrying, the one that said, Elias. I inverted it, flipped the phase, introduced noise, pure, unfiltered, chaotic, static. The basement convulsed, lights exploded, the chair disintegrated into ash, the walls rippled like water struck by a stone, and the mirror screamed, a sound like 1,000 radios tuning at once, screeching, howling, fracturing into white noise. Dr. Voss staggered back, clutching his ears, blood streaming from his nose. You fool! You'll unravel everything. Good, I said. Then I did the only thing left. I stepped through the broken mirror, into the static, into the noise, into the real. And as the world behind me collapsed into silence, I finally remembered her name. Ilara, not Voss. Callahan. My mother. She hadn't died in the car crash. They'd taken her. They'd wired her. They'd turned her grief into a signal, and I'd been tuned to it all along. Now, I untuned myself. Let the static flood in. Let the world break. Because some truths are too loud for a quiet world, and some memories are worth the noise. Outside, the clock on the wall began to tick again. Not tick-tock. Click, whir, reset. Click, whir, reset. Over and over, a metronome counting down. To what? I don't know. But this time, I'm listening, and I'm still here, bleeding, flickering, unstable, real. As long as I remember, as long as I resist, the reset hasn't won. It's only waiting. And at 3:17 a.m., I'll be awake, ready, with a hammer and a memory and the terrible, beautiful sound of static in my veins, because the world can reset all at once. But I remember the before, and I'll drag it back. One shattered second at a time. That brings this story to a close. Let's carry on to the next one. I accepted a night shift where time reset every time I blinked. The ad was buried in the back pages of the city's dying alt weekly, printed on the kind of cheap newsprint that left gray smudges on your fingers. Security guard needed, overnight. $500 cash per shift, no experience, no questions. Start tonight, 10 p.m., Willow Creek Mall. Below the text, a crude hand-drawn arrow pointed toward the crumbling shopping center on the edge of town, a place everyone avoided after dark, known more for its ghosts than its ghostly quiet storefronts. Desperation tastes like copper in your mouth. My bank account had bled dry after the accident. My fault, the lawyers said, the insurance company said, the empty passenger seat said, and rent was due in 3 days. $500 for 8 hours of sitting in a dead mall. I didn't care about the red flags. I needed the money. The mall entrance was a gaping maw of shattered glass and graffiti-tagged metal shutters. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mildew, stale popcorn, and something sharper underneath, ozone, like after a lightning strike. Moonlight bled through grimy skylights, painting the deserted concourse in shades of bruised gray. Dust motes hung suspended in the beams, frozen. A lone shopping cart lay on its side near a fountain choked with dead leaves and coins. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was watchful, hungry. A man waited near the fountain, tall, gaunt, wearing a security uniform 2 sizes too big. His name tag read Harlan, but his eyes were wrong, flat, depthless, like stones under muddy water. He didn't smile, didn't offer a hand, just nodded toward a door marked Security Office, Authorized Personnel Only. "Logbooks on the desk," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves skittering on concrete. "Sign in at the top of every hour, patrol the lower level every 2 hours. Stay out of the east corridor after midnight, especially the old theater entrance." He handed me a heavy Maglite flashlight, its metal cold against my palm. "Lights flicker. Don't panic. Don't touch anything that wasn't there before. Your shift ends at 6 a.m. I'll be back for the logbook." He turned and walked away without a backward glance, his footsteps making no sound on the dusty tile. He vanished around a corner where the shadows were thick as tar. I never heard a door close behind him. The security office was a cramped concrete box. A metal desk, a folding chair, a monitor showing static-filled feeds from cameras that clearly hadn't worked in years. The logbook lay open, its pages yellowed and brittle. At the top of the current page, in neat, precise handwriting, it read, 10 p.m., shift start, all quiet. My name wasn't signed, just a time. I picked up the pen chained to the desk. The plastic was cracked. As I leaned forward to sign in, my eyes burned. Sleepless nights had left them gritty, dry. I blinked. Click. The sound wasn't loud, but it vibrated in my skull, like a switch flipping deep inside my head. I was still leaning over the logbook. The page was blank. The time at the top read 10 p.m., shift start, all quiet, exactly as it had been before I blinked. My pen hovered over the paper. I hadn't signed it yet, had I? A cold sweat prickled my neck. I must have dozed off for a second, head nodding. I signed my name, Mark Riley, with a shaky hand. 10:02 p.m. I needed coffee, badly. On the desk sat a chipped ceramic mug filled with lukewarm tar-black liquid. I took a sip. Bitter. Stale. My eyes watered. I blinked. Click. I was holding the mug again. Full. Steaming faintly in the cold air of the office. The logbook page was blank except for the pre-printed 10 p.m. shift start. All quiet. My signature was gone. My hand wasn't on the pen. I hadn't signed in. Panic flooded in my chest. I signed again, faster this time. 10:03 p.m. I didn't touch the coffee. I just stared at the static on the monitor, focusing until my vision blurred. My eyes burned. Tears welled. I squeezed them shut, hard. Click. Back at the desk. Logbook blank, coffee full, mug warm. 10 p.m. entry pristine. My signature erased. A choked sound escaped my throat. This wasn't fatigue. This was something else. I stood up abruptly, knocking the chair over. I needed air, or light, or proof I wasn't losing my mind. I grabbed the mag light and stepped into the concourse. Moonlight still bled through the skylights. The dead fountain, the overturned cart, everything exactly as before. I walked toward the food court, my footsteps echoing too loudly in the vast emptiness. Past shuttered stalls, Sbarro, Orange Julius, a pretzel place with a cracked sign. The air grew colder near the east corridor. Harlan's warning echoed. Stay out of the east corridor after midnight. But it was only 10:15 p.m. I just needed to see, to ground myself in reality. The east corridor was darker. The skylights here were grimmier, choked with decades of grime. The storefronts were boarded up, plywood sheets nailed haphazardly over glass. One door stood out, a heavy, ornate theater entrance, its marquee dark, the velvet ropes frayed and rotten. Above the door, faded gold lettering read, "The Orpheum." The air here smelled different, not just mildew, something metallic like old pennies, and beneath it, that sharp ozone tang, stronger now. I trained the mag light beam on the theater doors. The wood was warped, splintered near the handle. As a light hit it, the beam flickered violently, not like a dying battery, like something was interfering with it. The light dimmed, surged, dimmed again, casting jumping shadows that made the boarded-up storefronts seem to lean inward. My eyes strained against the fluctuating light. Dry, burning. I squeezed them shut for just a second. Click. I was back in the security office chair, upright, the logbook open on the desk. Blank page. 10 p.m. Shift start. All quiet. My coffee mug, full. The mag light cold and heavy in my lap. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped thing. I hadn't signed in. Again, I signed with furious strokes. 10:05 p.m. I stood up, chair scraping loud in the silence. I wouldn't blink. I wouldn't. I marched back to the east corridor. The Orpheum doors loomed. I focused on the splintered wood grain, on the frayed velvet rope, on the dust motes dancing in my steady maglite beam. My eyes watered. Tears blurred the edges of my vision. I gritted my teeth, staring until my vision tunneled, until a dry ache became a white-hot throb behind my eyes. I held it, held it, held it. Click. security office, blank logbook, full coffee, 10 p.m. entry pristine, my signature gone. A whimper escaped me. I signed again. 10:07 p.m. This time, I didn't leave the chair. I sat rigid, back straight, eyes wide open, staring at the static on the monitor. The gray snow danced. My eyes burned. Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot and insistent. I blinked them away frantically, but each blink was a tiny betrayal. Each blink erased minutes I needed to count, to anchor myself. I wrote on the logbook page below my signature, 10:07, do not blink. Stay awake. Remember. I underlined it 3 times. My eyes were fire. I pressed the heels of my hands against them, rubbing hard. When I pulled my hands away, blinking rapidly to clear the spots. Click. Blank page. 10 p.m. entry. No note. No signature. The coffee steamed innocently. I signed. 10:01 p.m. Wrote the note again. The words jagged with panic. Do not blink. Time resets. East Corridor. Orpheum. Underlined. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I took the pen and pressed its sharp tip hard into the fleshy part of my palm. A bead of blood welled, hot and bright. Remember the pain. Remember the blood. Remember this moment. I stared at the blood on my skin, the red so vivid against the gray office. My eyes throbbed. Tears blurred the red smear. I blinked. Click. Back at the desk. Palm smooth, unbroken. No blood, no note. Just the blank logbook, the pre-printed 10 p.m. entry, the full mug of coffee. A sob tore from my throat. I signed my name. 10:02 p.m. I wrote the note again, pressed the pen into my palm until it hurt, stared at the blood. Tears burned. I blinked. Click. No blood. No note. 10 p.m. The coffee steamed. The static hissed on the monitor. The silence pressed in, thick and heavy. How many times? How many blinks? How many lost minutes, hours? My head throbbed. My thoughts felt slippery, fragmented. I couldn't remember driving here. Couldn't remember why I needed the money. The name on the logbook, Mark Riley, felt like a label on a jar I didn't recognize. Who was Mark Riley? I knew the shape of my own hands, but the memories attached to them were fading, overwritten by the loops. The accident, the empty passenger seat, Sarah's face. It was blurring, dissolving like ink in water. Each blink stole a piece of me. Each reset replaced Mark with a thinner, emptier version. Midnight came, or it didn't. Time was meaningless. I signed the logbook at 12 a.m., the pen shaking so badly the M in Mark looked like a child's scribble. Harlan's warning echoed uselessly in my hollowed-out mind. Stay out of the East Corridor after midnight. What did midnight matter when time reset every few minutes? I needed to understand. I needed to see the Orpheum. The pain in my palm was gone. The memory of the blood was gone. Only the terror remained, a cold, constant thing. I walked to the East Corridor. The mag light beam was steady tonight, no flickering. The air was colder. The ozone smell was overwhelming, mixed with the coppery tang of blood. The Orpheum door stood slightly ajar, just a crack. Blackness yawned behind it. From within, a sound, faint, a rhythmic thump, 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 like a slow, heavy heartbeat or something dragging itself across the stage. I pushed the door open. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating dust dancing in the air, rows of plush velvet seats torn and mildewed, a stage draped in heavy moth-eaten curtains. The thump, thump, thump came from behind the curtains, slow, deliberate, wet. My eyes burned fiercely. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the beam. I couldn't hold it. The dry agony was too much. I squeezed my eyes shut. Click. Security office. Blank logbook. 10 p.m. entry. Full coffee. My signature gone. The memory of the Orpheum door. The wet thumping sound. It was already fading, replaced by the sterile panic of the reset. I signed. 10:03 p.m. Wrote the note. Orpheum door open. Wet sound. Do not blink. Pressed the pen into my palm. Felt the sting. Felt the blood well. Stared at it. Tears blurred the red. I blinked. Click. No blood. No note. 10 p.m. The coffee steamed. The static hissed. The thump, thump, thump vibrated faintly in my bones. A memory my body hadn't forgotten, even if my mind had. It pulled at me, a deep, insistent thrumming in the floorboards beneath my chair. I signed the logbook. 10:01 a.m. The time didn't matter. Nothing mattered but the pull. The Orpheum was waiting. It remembered me. Even when I didn't fight the walk this time. My body moved on its own, drawn by the rhythm. The east corridor was darker. The moonlight from the skylights was gone, swallowed by a deeper shadow that clung to the boarded-up storefronts. The ozone smell was a physical pressure in my sinuses. The Orpheum doors were wide open. The beam of my mag light cut through the dusty air, illuminating the stage. The curtains were parted. On the stage stood a figure, tall, thin, wearing a security uniform 2 sizes too big. Harlan's uniform. But it wasn't Harlan. The back was turned to me, facing the empty rows of seats. Its head was bowed. In its hand, it held a maglite identical to mine, its beam pointing down at the stage floor. Where the light hit, the boards weren't wood. They were made of shifting dark water, thick, viscous, like oil, and in the water, shapes moved, faint, glowing outlines. A child's laughter echoed, tinny and distorted. A woman calling a name? Mark? Mark, where are you? From a place that felt both infinitely far away and buried deep in my chest. Sarah's voice. But I couldn't remember her face, only the sound of her calling into the dark. The figure on stage lifted its head. Slowly, it turned. Not Harlan, not anyone I knew. Its face was smooth, featureless, like polished stone. Where eyes should have been were 2 dark pools reflecting the maglite beam. It raised its free hand, not pointing, inviting. The thump, thump, thump wasn't from the stage. It was the sound of its heart, a slow, wet pulse that vibrated up through the floorboards into my feet. My own heartbeat stuttered to match it. My eyes burned like they'd been sand-blasted. Tears flooded, hot and blinding. I couldn't see the stage, couldn't see the water floor or the glowing shapes, couldn't see the faceless thing waiting. The pull was a physical ache in my ribs. The rhythm was in my blood. Thump, thump, thump. It knew my name. It remembered me better than I remembered myself. The silence of the empty seats pressed in, heavy with expectation, waiting for the show to begin, waiting for me to take the stage, to remember who I was before the loops erased me, before the accident, before the guilt, before Mark Riley became just a name signed in a logbook that reset with every blink. I squeezed my eyes shut against the tears, against the burning, against the terror of the thing on the stage that wore Harlan's uniform, but was so much older, so much hungrier than any man. I squeezed them shut and held my breath, clinging to the last thread of Mark. The taste of Sarah's coffee in the morning, the smell of rain on hot asphalt, the weight of my father's hand on my shoulder the day I got my first bike, and I whispered into the crushing dark behind my eyelids. Don't blink, don't blink, don't. Click. Cold metal under my palms, the desk, the logbook. Blank page, pre-printed words. 10 Layla p.m. Shift start, all quiet. The coffee mug full, steam curling in the weak light from the monitor. The static hiss filled my ears. My eyes were dry, clear, unburdened by tears, unburdened by memory. I picked up the pen. The plastic was smooth, uncracked. My hand was steady. No blood, no pain, just the quiet hum of the dead mall outside the door. The name came to me easily, like breathing, like it had always been there, waiting in the blank space. I signed the logbook, neat, precise. The ink flowed smoothly. Harlan, with that, the story is over. Let's move to the next story. Everyone in my town has my face except me. It began with the barista. I walked into the daily grind, same as every Tuesday at 7:13 a.m., ordered a large black coffee, no room, and waited by this pastry case, scrolling through weather alerts on my phone. Rain expected by noon. Nothing unusual. Then she called my name. Alex, your coffee's ready. I looked up. She was holding the cup, smiling, the warm, slightly distracted smile I'd seen 100 times, but something snagged in my chest like a fish hook catching on line. Her face, not like mine. Exactly mine. Same asymmetrical brow, left arch slightly higher, same faint scar above the right eyebrow, a relic of a childhood fall off a swing set I never told anyone about. Same subtle dent in the chin, same way the left nostril flared just a hair more when she smiled. I froze. She tilted her head. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Her voice was different, higher, smoother, but the cadence, the slight pause before ghost, the way her tongue tapped the roof of her mouth on the g, that was mine. That was the way I spoke when I was trying not to sound startled. I took the coffee, mumbled thanks. My fingers brushed hers, warm, dry, unremarkable, and yet a jolt ran up my arm. Not electric. Recognition, like touching a limb I'd forgotten I had. I sat at my usual corner table back to the wall and stared into the black liquid. My reflection wavered in the ceramic, pale, sleep-etched, hair in that same stubborn cowlick that refused to lie flat. Normal? Familiar? Then I looked up. The man at the next table, reading the Chronicle, glasses perched low, turned a page and blinked. Same slow, deliberate blink. Same tiny twitch in the left eyelid just after. I shifted in my seat. He didn't look at me, just sipped his tea. But the angle of his wrist as he lifted the cup, my angle, the way he rested his elbow on the table, my habit, born from a childhood elbow fracture that never quite healed straight, a cold thread unspooled in my gut. I left without finishing the coffee. Outside, the town breathed its usual autumn rhythm. School buses idling, delivery vans double-parked, Mrs. Callahan walking her terrier past the post office. I nodded automatically at Officer Ruiz directing traffic at Maple and 3rd. He waved back, and as he turned, sunlight caught his profile. I stopped dead. Same nose, not similar. Identical. The slight bump on the bridge where mine had been broken in high school during a stupid fight behind the bleachers, a secret I'd never told anyone, not even my sister. Same downturn at the corners of the mouth when at rest. Same way his hairline receded, exactly like mine. Same faint widow's peak, same 2 stubborn strands that refused to gray. My breath went shallow. I walked faster, head down toward City Hall. My destination, my alibi. I worked in records, quiet job, safe job. Files didn't stare back, but the sidewalk was a hall of mirrors. The teenager skateboarding past, same jawline, same distracted frown as he wiped hair from his eyes. The woman waiting for the crosswalk, same posture, same unconscious habit of shifting weight to a left foot, same faint crease between her brows when concentrating. The bus driver leaning out his window, shouting to a cyclist, same laugh lines fanning from the eyes. Mild laugh lines. I'd traced them in the bathroom mirror last week, wondering when they'd gotten so deep. By the time I pushed through the heavy oak doors of City Hall, my hands were clammy, my shirt clinging to my back. "Morning, Alex," chirped Marjorie from accounting, bustling past with a stack of folders. She didn't look at me, but her voice, it wasn't just tone, it was timbre. The slight rasp in the lower register, the one I got after talking too long at town meeting. The way she clipped the G in morning. My towel speech pattern, down to the microsecond pause before the nay. I made it to my cubicle, shut the door, flimsy particle board, barely a barrier, and sank into my chair. My hands trembled as I logged in. I pulled up the employee directory, scrolled. Every photo loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, every face. Me, not lookalikes, not doppelgangers in the eerie folkloric sense. No uncanny valley, no grotesque mimicry. Just me. Same eyes. Hazel, flecked with gold near the pupil, darker at the rim. Same faint asymmetry in the ears, left slightly lower. Same tiny mole behind the right ear lobe. I'd only noticed it last year during a physical. I clicked on security camera footage from the lobby, time-stamped 8:02 a.m. There I was, walking in, coat over my arm, glancing at my watch, except I hadn't arrived until 8:17. The figure on screen paused at the directory board, my habitual hesitation, head tilting left, eyes scanning top to bottom, exactly as I did, because my right eye had slightly worse acuity, and I compensated unconsciously. But it wasn't me. I rewound, watched again. The coat was different, navy instead of my charcoal, the watch a silver face, not my black digital. Yet the movement, the set of the shoulders, the way the left hand flexed slightly when reaching for the door handle. It was like watching a reflection with a 3-second delay. A knock on my door. I jumped. It opened before I could answer. "Alex, you in?" It was Carl from maintenance, round face, friendly, always smelled like sawdust and peppermints, except his face wasn't round, not anymore. As he stepped in, light from the hallway hit him full on. Same bone structure, same narrow bridge of the nose, same slight indentation above the upper lip, the one my mother used to say made me look perpetually skeptical. He smiled. "Heard you looked like you'd seen a ghost at the coffee shop. Everything all right?" His teeth, even the tiny chip on the left incisor from biting into a frozen candy cane at age 10. My chip. I'm fine, I managed. "Just tired." He nodded. "Yeah, long night, huh?" He leaned against the door frame. My stance. Weight on the right leg, left knee bent, arms crossed just so. Dream's been weird lately. Feels like walking through someone else's life, you know? My throat closed. "No," I whispered. "I don't." He studied me, not with suspicion, with concern. The kind you'd give yourself if you saw yourself faltering. "You sure? You look off, like you don't recognize yourself." The words hung in the air. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my window, curtains open, watching the street, Maple Creek wasn't big. Population 2,318 per the last census I'd filed. Quiet. Trees, brick storefronts, a single traffic light that blinked yellow after 9 p.m. At 11:47 p.m., Mrs. Gable across the street took out her trash. She walked with a cane, slow, deliberate, and as the porch light caught her face, there it was, the same tired set to the eyes, the same way her mouth tightened at the corners when she bent. My expression, when I was trying not to cry. At 1:03 a.m., a pickup rolled down the street. Danny Reeves, night shift at the mill. He waved lazily at the empty road. Same wave, same lazy flick of the wrist, same 2 fingers raised. I knew because I did that. Every time I passed someone I vaguely recognized but didn't want to stop for. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass. Was I losing it? Had I cracked? Some latent psychosis triggered by stress, isolation, the slow erosion of routine? Or was it something else? I dug out my high school yearbook, Maple Creek High, class of 2008 ARC, flipped to the senior portraits, page after page, every face, me, different haircuts, different clothes, smiling, serious, awkward, my awkwardness, the way my neck tensed in formal. Photos, but the features, identical. I scrolled through old class photos on my laptop, the 5th grade field trip to the Science Museum, the 8th grade band concert, every child, every adult chaperone, every single face, mine, even the teachers, even the bus driver in the background of the group shot. I clicked on a random news archive, Maple Creek Gazette, July 12th, 1994, town celebrates centennial. Black and white photo, crowds lining Main Street, parade floats, mayor cutting the ribbon. I zoomed. The mayor, same face. The woman holding the flag, same face. The boy riding the lead horse, same face, younger but unmistakable. The dog beside him, even the dog had eyes that looked familiar, not human, but the shape of the gaze, the quiet intensity. I shut the laptop. My hands were ice. I walked to the bathroom, flipped on the light. The mirror showed me, pale, wide-eyed, hair disheveled. I leaned closer, same pores, same faint redness on the left cheek, where I'd shaved too close, same tiny scar on the chin from a bicycle crash at 7. But something was off, not in the reflection, in me. I blinked. The reflection blinked. I raised my right hand. The reflection raised its left. Standard mirror reversal. But then I lifted only my index finger. The reflection lifted its index finger. Then, without me moving, I saw it. The reflection's middle finger twitched just once. A microspasm. I hadn't done that. I stared. The reflection stared back. And slowly, so slowly I thought I imagined it, its lips parted, not to speak, to smile, a small, knowing smile, the kind you give when you've just remembered where you left the keys. I stumbled back, hit the sink. The light flickered. When it steadied, the reflection was normal again, just me, exhausted, terrified. But the air smelled different. Not toothpaste and old plumbing. Rain on pine needles. The scent from the woods behind my house. The scent I'd only ever smelled once before, in a dream, years ago, where I walked down a foggy road and saw a figure ahead, wearing my coat, my shoes, and turning, just as I caught up, only to find no one there, and the road behind me, gone. I didn't go to work the next day. I drove, out of town, west, past the county line, past the billboard that read, "You are now leaving Maple Creek, a place to belong." I stopped at a gas station in Ellsworth, population 1,842. Stepped inside. The clerk looked up from a crossword. I braced myself. But no, he was older, weathered, Deep laugh lines, a nose broken twice, gray stubble. Different. I nearly wept with relief. "Coffee?" he asked, voice gravelly, unfamiliar. "Yes, please." He poured it, slid it across the counter. I fumbled for my wallet. He glanced at me, really looked, and frowned. "Huh?" he said. "What?" He tapped his temple. "You've got that Maple Creek look." My blood chilled. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Dunno, just the way you hold yourself. The eyes, like you're waiting for something to catch up with you." He paused. "You from there?" I nodded. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Funny thing about that town. Used to deliver propane up there back in the 90s. Never could figure it out. Every time I drove in past the old stone bridge, you know the one, the radio'd cut out. GPS'd spin, and everyone, they all looked related, not just similar. Same, like one mold poured over and over." He shook his head. "Stopped going. Gave me the creeps. Last time I was there, 07 maybe, saw a kid riding a bike. Looked exactly like the mayor. Same kid, I swear, 10 years younger. Same scratch on the knee. Same helmet strap dangling." He held my gaze. "You ever look in the mirror and wonder, who was here before you?" I left the coffee on the counter, drove back. Not because I wanted to, because the Subaru turned on its own. The key wasn't in the ignition, yet the engine purred. The steering wheel turned left to the county line. I didn't fight it. By the time I crossed the stone bridge, the one he'd mentioned, the GPS on my phone rebooted. One notification. "Welcome to Maple Creek. Population 2,319. 2,319, not 2,318. I was back, and there was one more. I parked in front of my house. Lights were on inside. I hadn't left them on. I climbed the steps. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The living room was tidy, too tidy. My coffee mug, washed, dried, placed precisely in the center of the kitchen counter. My favorite sweater folded on the arm of the sofa, and on the coffee table, a single photo, a Polaroid. Me, sitting in this very chair. But I wasn't in the chair now. In the photo, I was smiling. A real smile, not the tight, polite one I wore in town. The kind I hadn't felt in years. On the back, in handwriting that matched my own perfectly. He's starting to notice. Soon he'll understand. Soon he'll be ready to let go. I turned. The hallway mirror reflected the empty room, except in the glass behind me, a figure stood in the doorway. Same height, same build, wearing my robe. Its face was turned away. But I knew, because as it raised its hand to the light switch, the movement was smoother, more certain, like it had done this 1,000 times, and when it finally turned, slowly, deliberately, its face wasn't blank, it wasn't distorted, it was me, but rested at peace, eyes clear, no fear, no questions, just quiet acceptance. It smiled, not at me. For me? Then it reached out, not toward me, but past me, toward the mirror. Its fingers touched the glass, and the surface didn't resist. It rippled like water, and behind it, not my living room, a hallway, warm light, a door ajar, a voice, muffled but familiar, my voice, but calm, content, saying, "Come on in, you're home." I didn't move. The figure in the mirror waited, patient. It knew I'd seen the truth now. The town wasn't filled with people who looked like me. It was filled with me. Everyone, the child on the bike, the mayor, the barista, the bus driver, all fragments, echoes, shells waiting to be shed, and this one, this calm, smiling version, was the next, the one who remembered, the one who belonged, the one who knew the way. My breath fogged the glass. The figure mirrored it. Then softly it mouthed 2 words. I knew them before it formed them, because they were the words I'd whispered to myself every night for the past week, in the dark, hoping they weren't true. It's time. I lifted my hand, trembling, pressed it to the mirror, where its hand waited. The glass was cold, then warm, then gone. I stepped through. The door clicked, shut behind me. Outside, in the quiet street, a neighbor walked past my house. She glanced at the window, saw me, the one who'd just stepped inside, pulling back the curtain, smiling, waving. She waved back. Same smile, same wave, same face. And in her pocket, her phone buzzed. A new notification. Welcome to Maple Creek. Population 300 toyones. That brings this story to a close. Let's carry on to the next one. The sky has been slightly wrong for weeks, and no one else notices. The first time I noticed, I thought it was the migraine. That familiar pressure behind my left eye, the one that made fluorescent lights hum like angry hornets. I was standing on my rickety fire escape, nursing lukewarm coffee in a chipped mug, watching the dawn bleed over the city skyline, but the colors were off. Not the usual bruised purples and hesitant pinks. This was a sickly chartreuse yellow bleeding into a bruise of violet like old meat under star lighting. I blinked hard, rubbed my temples. Migraine aura, I told myself. Just like Dr. Evans warned about. Ignore it. Breathe. I went back inside, drew the curtains, swallowed 2 ibuprofen with tap water that tasted faintly of copper. By noon, the sky had normalized. A flat, featureless gray, but the metallic tang in my mouth lingered. It happened again 3 days later. Clear, Tuesday afternoon. I was walking to the bus stop, the air crisp, with the promise of autumn, when I paused mid-stride. The blue overhead wasn't right. Not cloudless, not overcast, just wrong. It had the depth of a painted backdrop, a matte finish that swallowed the sunlight instead of reflecting it. The edges of buildings seemed unnaturally sharp against it, as if the sky itself was pressing down, flattening the world. I snapped a photo with my phone. The image showed a perfectly ordinary, if slightly hazy, afternoon sky. I showed it to Mrs. Gable from the laundromat as I dropped off my sheets. "See that color?" I asked, pointing at the screen. She squinted, pushing her Coke bottle glasses up her nose. "Looks like Tuesday to me, hun. You feeling all right? You're pale." I mumbled something about allergies. Later, scrolling through the photo on my laptop, I zoomed in. In the upper left corner, almost lost in the pixelation, a tiny, unnatural ripple marred the blue, like a heat mirage, but cold. Static. The wrongness became a constant hum beneath the surface of my days. Not dramatic shifts, subtle, insidious. The sunset over the river wasn't gold and crimson. It bled a deep, arterial red that made the water look viscous, thick as syrup. I watched joggers on the path below, their faces bathed in that hellish glow, laughing, chatting on phones, utterly oblivious. I tried to film it. The phone recorded a perfectly normal, if dull, orange sunset. I took screenshots, deleted them, took them again. Normal, always normal. Only my eyes saw the truth. Only my skin felt the faint vibration in the air when the clouds gathered. Not thunder, but a low subsonic thrumming that resonated in my molars. I started wearing sunglasses indoors. My boss, Brenda, pulled me aside after I flinched when she walked past my cubicle. "You look exhausted, Eli, and those glasses, it's 3 p.m. You seeing things?" Her concern was genuine, edged with professional caution. I lied. Said my optometrist recommended tinted lenses for screen fatigue. She nodded, unconvinced, but dropped it. The lie tasted like pennies. The headaches worsened, not just behind the eye, a deep, grinding ache in my skull as if my brain was slowly expanding against a bone. The metallic taste became constant, a coppery film on my tongue, thickening after rain, and the dreams, not dreams. Visions. I'd lie in bed, curtains drawn tight against the wrong sky, and feel it pressing against the glass. Not wind, a presence, cold, vast, patient. In the dark, images would flood my mind. A child's handprint smeared on a fogged window pane, the smell of wet earth and ozone after a storm that never came, the sound of a single off-key piano note repeating endlessly in an empty room. I'd wake, gasping, drenched in sweat that smelled faintly of rust, the copper taste flooding my mouth, my heart hammering against ribs that felt too fragile. One night, I woke to the sound of scratching, not at the window, but inside my walls. I pressed my ear to the plaster. It was the sound of fingernails or roots slowly, deliberately, tracing patterns in the lath beneath the surface. I tore a hole in the wallpaper with my bare hands. Nothing, just dusty insulation. But when I shone my phone light inside, the dust glittered with tiny iridescent flakes like crushed beetle wings. I vacuumed them up, hands shaking. The scratching didn't return, but the taste of copper deepened. I stopped trusting photos. I stopped trusting mirrors. My reflection in the bathroom sink one morning made me freeze. My eyes weren't bloodshot from lack of sleep. The whites were threaded with faint, shimmering veins of that same chartreuse yellow I'd seen at dawn. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, looked again. Normal, just tired eyes. But the metallic taste surged, thick and cloying, and a drop of warm liquid slid from my left nostril. I touched it. Blood, dark red, almost black. I washed it away, the water swirling pink down the drain. That afternoon, at my desk, typed mindlessly into the insurance claims database, a wave of dizziness hit me. The fluorescent lights above my cubicle weren't humming, they were singing. A high-pitched, discordant whine that seemed to sync with the subsonic thrumming from the sky. I gripped the edge of my desk, knuckles white. Brenda was talking to me. Her lips moved, but her voice was drowned out by the singing lights and the thrumming sky. All I could hear was a whisper, layered beneath the noise, seeming to come from the vents, the walls, the very air. Look up, see us, remember. I stumbled to the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and vomited into the toilet. The bile was streaked with that same iridescent glitter. Desperation drove me to the only person I thought might understand. Not a doctor, not a therapist. Old man Henderson. He ran the dusty, cluttered astronomy shop 3 blocks from my apartment. Henderson's Heavens, a place most people walked past without a glance. I'd bought a cheap telescope from him years ago before Clara left, before the world started fraying at the edges. He was in his late 70s with eyes that held the patience of deep space and fingers stained with telescope grease. I found him polishing a lens under a green-shaded lamp, the shop smelling of dust, metal, and old paper. "Mr. Henderson," I rasped, my voice raw, The sky, it's wrong. He didn't look up, just kept polishing, slow, deliberate circles. Wrong how, son? The color, the texture, it hums. It tastes like copper. The words tumbled out, frantic. I described the chartreuse dawn, the matte blue, the arterial sunset, the thrumming, the dreams, the blood. He set down the lens cloth, slowly, deliberately. His eyes, when they met mine, were sharp, ancient. You're not the first, he said quietly. Not by a long shot. Comes in waves, like tides we can't see. Relief, cold and dizzying, washed over me. You see it too? He shook his head, a sad smile touching his lips. No, son, I don't. Not anymore. But I remember seeing it before the forgetting. He gestured to the cluttered shelves, globes, star charts, brass instruments. This shop, it's a shield, a focus. I keep my eyes on the real stars, the ones in the books, the ones that don't change. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to cut through the shop's dusty silence. It's not the sky that's wrong, Eli. It's us. We're forgetting what's behind the blue, what's always been there, waiting in the static between the stars. The sky isn't a picture, it's a veil. And when enough of us forget the old stories, the old fears, the veil thins. It gets hungry. I stared at him, cold dread coiling in my gut. Hungry for what? Memories, he said simply. The sharp ones, the painful ones, the ones that anchor us to this world. It feeds on the forgetting, and when it's fed enough, it replaces. He tapped his temple. That headache, that taste, it's not in your head. It's the sky in your head, making room. I fled the shop, Henderson's words echoing, making room. I spent the night pacing my apartment, every shadow in the corner seeming deeper, thicker, holding its breath. I checked the window every hour. The sky was a normal, starless black. But the thrumming was louder, a physical vibration in the floorboards. The copper taste was a constant film, and the whisper was back, not from the vents now, but from the corners of the room, layered with the thrumming. Almost time. Let go. Remember the water. The water. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. A memory surged, not mine, but given. Standing on a rickety wooden dock on a lake I'd never seen. Sunset painting the water the same arterial red I'd seen over the city river. My father's hand, rough and warm, gripping my small shoulder. His voice, thick with tears I'd never heard before. It's okay to be scared, Eli, but don't forget, no matter how dark it gets, don't forget the shape of the light. Then the splash, the cold shock, the frantic thrashing, his head disappearing beneath the dark red-stained water. My own screams, raw and childlike, swallowed by the vast, indifferent lake. I'd never had a father. He'd died before I was born. My mother raised me alone. This memory was a lie, a shard of glass shoved into my mind. I curled on the floor, sobbing, the copper taste flooding my mouth, thick as blood. The whisper intensified, triumphant. You buried him. You buried the memory. But the water remembers. The sky remembers. Let us have it. Let us have the pain. We'll give you peace. Morning brought no relief. The sky was a pale, sickly yellow-green like old bruises. The thrumming was a constant vibration in my teeth. I called in sick. Couldn't face the fluorescent singing, Brenda's concerned eyes, the normalcy that felt like a lie. I walked, aimlessly, past the park, where children played under the wrong sky, laughing, chasing bubbles that caught the unnatural light and fractured it into impossible, wrong colors. A little girl, maybe 5, pointed up, her voice clear and bright. "Look, Mama, the sky's wearing a pretty dress." Her mother smiled, squinting up. "You're right, sweetie. Such a lovely day." They saw nothing, heard nothing, felt nothing of the vibration in the earth beneath their feet. I stared at them, a sob trapped in my throat. How could they not know? I found myself at the river. The arterial red sunset was gone, replaced by that same flat matte gray, but the water still looked thick, sluggish. I leaned against the railing, watching the dark current swirl around the pilings. The whisper was a roar now, inside my skull, outside in the air. "Jump! Remember the water. Let us have him." My father's face surged in my mind. My father, the one from the memory shard, his eyes wide with fear and love as he sank beneath the red water. The guilt was a physical weight, crushing my chest. I had forgotten him, buried the memory of his suicide so deep it had festered, becoming this hollow ache I'd mistaken for loneliness. The sky hadn't given me a false memory. It had dug up the true one I'd buried, the one that anchored me to pain, the one it craved. A hand touched my arm. I flinched violently. It was a police officer, young, kind-faced. "You okay, sir? You've been standing here a long time. You look unwell." His eyes flickered with concern, but also wariness. He saw my pallor, my shaking hands, the tears I hadn't realized were streaming down my face. He saw a man on the edge, not a man seeing the sky bleed. The sky," I choked out, pointing upwards. "Can't you see it? It's wrong. It's eating us. It's making us forget." He followed my gaze, squinted. His expression softened with pity. "Looks like rain's coming, sir. Gray as it gets. You should get inside, warm up, maybe see a doc." He gently steered me away from the railing. "Let's get you somewhere safe." His touch was warm, human, real. For a second the thrumming lessened. The copper taste faded. Hope, fragile and desperate, flickered. He can help. He can see. Then he looked back at the sky, his face relaxing into bland acceptance. "Just a gray day," he murmured almost to himself. "Nothing to worry about." The hope died, crushed. The thrumming surged back, violent, vibrating the fillings in my teeth. The whisper became a shriek inside my skull. "No one sees, no one remembers, only you. Give us the memory, give us the pain." I wrenched my arm free, stumbling back. "You're blind," I screamed at the officer, at the oblivious joggers, at the city under its diseased sky. "Can't you feel it? Can't you taste it? It's hungry." I turned and ran, not caring where, just away from the blindness, the forgetting, the terrible, beautiful lie of normalcy. I ran until my lungs burned, the copper taste thick as syrup in my throat. I didn't stop until I reached the overgrown lot on Elm Street, the one slated for a new condo, untouched for years. Ancient oaks stood sentinel, their branches heavy with unseen weight. The sky here was worse. Not yellow-green, not gray, a shifting bruised purple, shot through with veins of that same chartreuse static. It pulsed like a heartbeat. The thrumming was deafening here, a physical pressure against my eardrums, shaking the ground beneath my worn sneakers. The whisper wasn't words anymore. It was a chorus, 1,000 voices layered with the buzz of insects and the crackle of dry leaves. "Eli, Eli, Eli, give us the water, give us the pain, let us in, let us remember for you." I sank to my knees in the tall, dew-wet grass. The metallic taste flooded my mouth, thick and coppery. Warm liquid streamed from my nose. I didn't wipe it away. I looked up, not at the sky, into it, past the bruised purple, past the static. I saw it then. Not stars, not clouds. A vast, shimmering lattice. A net woven from forgotten memories. Fragments of lives. A child's lost balloon. A first kiss under a street lamp. The smell of a grandmother's kitchen. The sharp sting of a betrayal. Millions of them glowing faintly tangled in the net. And beneath the net, in the infinite dark behind the sky, something moved. Not a shape. An absence. A hunger that had a taste, a sound, a terrible patient intelligence. It fed on the net. It fed on the forgetting. And it was close. So close. My memory of the lake, of my father's sinking face, it was a bright, painful jewel in that net. A feast. The whisper coalesced into a single, clear voice inside my head, not mine, not human, ancient, cold, hungry. We see your pain. We taste your remembering. It is sharp, beautiful. We have been so long without such flavor. Give it to us. Let us take the weight. Let us take the water. We will give you a new sky. A quiet sky. A sky that does not hurt. Tears cut tracks through the dirt on my face. The memory of my father. My real father. The one who jumped into that red-stained lake on a day very like this one, leaving a 6-year-old boy standing on a dock with a taste of pennies in his mouth, was a raw, open wound. The guilt of surviving, the guilt of burying it so deep I'd forgotten his face, his voice, even the reason I'd always hated lakes, always flinched at the smell of wet earth. The sky hadn't lied. I had forgotten. I'd built a life on that forgetting, and the cost was this hollow ache, this constant vibration in my bones, this taste of blood in my mouth. What if the hunger was right? What if forgetting the pain was worth the price of the wrong sky? I closed my eyes, not to shut out the sky, to dive into the memory, the dock, the red water, the cold shock as I jumped in after him, too small, too weak, dragged under by his flailing hand before someone pulled me back. His last look. Not fear, relief, the relief of letting go, the relief of the water taking the pain away. I'd carried his pain ever since, buried it, let it poison my sky. Yes, I whispered, the word tearing from my coppery throat. Take it. Take the water. Take the pain. Give me quiet. The thrumming stopped. Abruptly, the silence was a physical blow. I opened my eyes. The sky wasn't bruised purple. It wasn't yellow-green. It wasn't gray. It was soft. A gentle, luminous silver, like moonlight on snow. It had depth, texture. It felt clean. The air was still, silent, sweet. The metallic taste was gone. The headache vanished, leaving a profound, weightless calm. I stood up, brushing dew from my knees. The memory of the lake, of my father's face, it was still there, but it didn't hurt. It was like a story I'd read long ago. Sad, yes, but distant, clean, unburdened. I walked home under the silver sky. People were outside, pointing, smiling. A woman laughed, tilting her face up, eyes closed, breathing deeply. "It's beautiful," she called to no one in particular. "I've never seen a sky like this." Children ran through sprinklers, shrieking with joy under the gentle light. No one flinched at the silence. No one tasted copper. They saw the silver. They felt the peace. They remembered nothing of the bruise, the thrumming, the hunger. They only knew the quiet. I stopped at my apartment building. Mrs. Gable was on her stoop, feeding pigeons. She beamed at me. "Eli, isn't it glorious? Like a blessing." Her eyes were clear, untroubled. No Coke bottle glasses. no wrinkles of worry, just peace. She didn't see the faint, iridescent glitter still clinging to my jacket sleeves. She didn't smell the lingering scent of wet earth and ozone that clung to my skin. She saw only the silver sky and the calm on my face. I nodded, smiling back. A real smile. Easy. Unburdened. Glorious, I echoed. Upstairs, I drew back the curtains. The silver light flooded the room, warm and gentle. I looked out at the city transformed. Buildings glowed softly. Windows reflected the luminous sky like pools of mercury. No sharp edges, no harsh shadows, only peace. I walked to the bathroom, looked in the mirror. My eyes were clear. The whites held no chartreuse veins. My face was calm, rested. The hollow ache behind my ribs was gone, replaced by a quiet fullness. I leaned closer. In the very center of my left pupil, almost invisible unless you knew to look, was a single perfect point of light. Not silver, chartreuse. A tiny cold star buried deep in the calm sea of my eye. A reminder, a seed. The whisper wasn't gone. It was changed. Soft, satisfied. A gentle hum in my marrow, like a lullaby. We remember for you now. Sleep. The sky is kind. I touched the cool glass of the mirror. Outside, the silver sky deepened towards twilight, holding the city in its gentle, unblinking gaze. Beautiful, perfect, wrong. And I loved it. I loved the quiet. I loved the forgetting. I loved the absence of the ache. I drew the curtain shut, not against the light, but to savor the peace within the walls. The last thing I saw before the room dimmed was my reflection, calm and serene, and that tiny cold star burning in the dark of my eye, waiting, patient, hungry, not for pain anymore, for the next forgetting. The next soul who looks up and sees the bruise behind the blue, the next memory sharp enough to feed the endless silver sky. I smiled at my reflection. The star in my eye winked back, and the whisper, soft as falling dust, settled into my bones. Soon, and this story ends here. The next one begins now. Everyone around me knows what I'm going to say before I say it. I didn't mean to move into the house on Sycamore Lane. Not really. It wasn't a decision so much as a slow surrender, a collapse into the cheapest option after the job at the publishing house evaporated, after my savings bled dry in months rather than years, after the last roommate, Lena, packed her things and left a post-it on the fridge that read, "Sorry, I just can't breathe in this place anymore." I didn't blame her, neither could I. But rent was due, and Sycamore Lane was the only thing still standing under $700. The listing had been vague. Historic 1920s duplex. One side occupied, other vacant. Utilities included, no credit check. No photos, no address, just a phone number. A man named Elias answered on the third ring, voice thin and papery, like he'd smoked 2 packs a day since Eisenhower was president. He didn't ask for references, didn't ask for ID, just said, "You'll like it, quiet, good bones." And when I showed up, suitcase, duffel bag, desperation clinging to me like static, he was waiting on the porch in a cardigan that smelled faintly of mothballs and camphor, holding a single brass key. The house wasn't abandoned, not technically. Elias lived in the east wing, a shadow behind lace curtains that never stirred no matter how hard the wind blew. The west side, the one I rented, was sealed off by a heavy oak door with a rusted deadbolt. Inside, it was clean. Too clean, not sterile, but curated. Dust had settled evenly over everything, bookshelves, armchairs, the mantel clock frozen at 3:17, but nothing was broken, No cobwebs in the corners, no cracks in the plaster. The wallpaper, a faded damask of olive and rust, curled only slightly at the seams, like it remembered how to behave. The first night, I didn't sleep. Not because of the creaks that old houses groan was expected, but because of the silence between them. A held breath, a pause too precise, as if the house were waiting for me to misstep. I made coffee the next morning in a percolator left on the stove, still full of grounds, still plugged in, still warm. I didn't remember turning it on. I asked Elias about it when I saw him collecting mail from his box. A single envelope, blank except for a smudged postmark from Havenford, 1983. He didn't turn, just said, "You like it strong, don't you? 2 scoops, not 3. 3's bitter." I froze. "How did you stirred it twice, counterclockwise." He slipped the envelope into his pocket. "Milk in after, always after." I hadn't done any of that yet. I'd only thought about it. Standing there, weighing how much coffee to use, debating the stir direction out of some half-remembered superstition my grandmother had about invoking good luck. I laughed it off. Coincidence, confirmation bias, stress, hallucination. I was tired, unmoored, my brain stitching patterns from noise. But then it happened again. At the corner store, Miller's Groceries. The sign crooked, paint peeling like sunburnt skin. I reached for a carton of eggs. The clerk, a woman with silver hair pinned tight and eyes like river stones, didn't look up from her crossword. "Better grab the large," she murmured. "Small ones crack when you carry them in that bag. The strap's frayed." I glanced down. My canvas tote did have a fraying strap. I hadn't noticed until that second. I opened my mouth to ask how she knew, to protest, to say something. But she added, quieter, almost tenderly, "And you were going to ask if we had oat milk. We don't, never did." I had been about to ask. Word for word. I left without the eggs. Back at the house, I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, hands trembling. "Okay, paranoia. It's escalating. You need to ground yourself. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear." I looked around. 1, the dresser, oak, chipped corner. 2, the window, warped glass, view of Elias's overgrown garden. 3, the closet door, slightly ajar. 4, the lamp on the nightstand, ceramic base, floral pattern, bulb flickering faintly. 5, the mirror above the dresser. In the mirror, my reflection blinked. I blinked. It didn't. Not right away. It waited half a second, maybe less, and then blinked, eyes sliding shut. After mine had already opened again, I stood so fast the chair toppled. My breath came in shallow, hot bursts. No, 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 no. Optical illusion, fatigue, lag in neural processing. Some trick of the light and the angle. I stepped closer, nose almost touching the glass. "Hello," I whispered. My reflection's lips moved before I spoke. "Hello," it mouthed, silent and perfect. Then, as my own voice finally reached my ears, it added, lips still moving in eerie sync with my delayed hearing. "You're not supposed to be here yet." I backed away, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, turned, walked out, needed air, needed people. I went to the library downtown, the big stone one with stained glass windows and the smell of old paper and dust. Safe, public, logical. Sat at a carrel near the philosophy section, pulled out my notebook, tried to write. This is anxiety. This is grief. This is the slow unraveling after loss. I hadn't told anyone, but my mother had died 3 months earlier. Sudden aneurysm. 1 minute she was humming in the kitchen, the next, silence. And then the phone call, and then the hollow. I wrote, "What if it's not paranoia? What if something is echoing me?" A book slid onto the table beside my notebook, not dropped, not set down. Slid, smooth, deliberate. I looked up. No one. But the book, The Echo Chamber, Perception, Premonition, and the Illusion of Free Will by Dr. A. Voss, lay open to page 87. A paragraph was underlined in faint pencil. The phenomenon of anticipatory mirroring, where external agents articulate a subject's unspoken thoughts moments before vocalization, has been documented in cases of extreme psychological duress, temporal lobe anomalies, and, controversially, in proximity to resonant loci, spaces where time's linear structure phrase allowing future cognition to bleed backward into the present auditory field. My hands went cold. I hadn't searched for this book, hadn't even known it existed. I flipped to the front, checked the due date slip, checked out, October 12th, 1997. Renewed, November 3rd, 1997. Due, never returned. And below, in neat looping script, for C, who asked the right question too late. C, my name is Cassian. No one calls me that, not since college. Everyone says Cass or Cass. My mother was the last person who ever used Cassian, softly when she was worried. "Cassian, love, come sit with me." I closed the book, stood, walked to the circulation desk. The librarian, a man with wire-rimmed glasses and a name tag reading M. Pritchard, looked up as I approached. Before I could speak, he said, "You're going to ask if we have any records on the Sycamore Lane house." I stopped, swallowed. Yes. He didn't smile, didn't frown, just reached under the desk and pulled out a faded manila folder, slid it across the counter. Inside, a single sheet of brittle newsprint. The Havenford Gazette, October 14th, 1997. Local author found dead in home study. Elias Voss, 58, acclaimed writer of psychological fiction, was discovered deceased yesterday afternoon by neighbor Martha Greeley. Authorities report no signs of foul play, cause of death pending autopsy. Voss, known for his reclusive nature and obsession with temporal resonance, had reportedly been working on an unfinished manuscript titled The Echo Protocol. Friends describe him as increasingly withdrawn in recent months, often claiming he could hear the shape of tomorrow. Beneath the article, a smaller inset photo, a younger Elias, standing on the porch of my house. Same cardigan, same stillness, and in the background, through the open west side door, a glimpse of a room, my room, the dresser, the lamp, the mirror. But in the mirror's reflection, someone else, a man, mid-30s, dark hair, wearing a gray sweater I owned. Me. Except in 1997, I was 8 years old. I dropped the folder. M. Pritchard didn't flinch. "He waited 29 years, he said, voice low, eyes fixed on mine. Said he'd know you by the way you hold your pen, thumb on the barrel, index wrapped tight, like you're afraid it'll escape." I did hold my pen that way, always had. "How?" My voice cracked. "How long have you—" "Since the first time you thought about leaving," he interrupted gently. "You'll stay, though. You always do." I ran, not home, not yet, to the park, to a bench beneath a dying oak, sat, shook, tried to breathe, tried to think, not just react. This is a breakdown, a psychotic break, sleep deprivation, grief hallucination. There's a medical explanation. There has to be. I pulled out my phone, dialed Dr. Arden, my old therapist. Voicemail. Leave a message. I'll return your call within 2 business days. I started speaking. Dr. Arden, it's Cass. I think I'm losing it. People are saying my thoughts before I say them. I saw myself in a 1997 newspaper. There's a house. The phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my own number. Me now. And I don't know if I'm remembering the future or forgetting the past. I stared at the screen. I hadn't typed that, but I had been thinking it, word for word. I dropped the phone. It hit the bench, screen cracking. A woman walking a terrier paused, looked at me, not with concern, with recognition. You'll ask if the dog's name is Winston, she said softly. It is, and yes, he does tilt his head when you say treat. Like that. She mimicked the tilt. The dog did it. You were just wondering if animals echo too. I stood, backed away. She nodded. Go on. He's waiting. He, Elias. I walked home in the fading light, each step heavier than the last. The house loomed, windows dark except for a single amber glow in Elias's study. The west side door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick, warm, close, smelling of beeswax and something older, like dried ink and ozone. Everything was as I'd left it, except the mirror. Now it wasn't empty. My reflection stood there, but it wasn't mimicking me. It was ahead of me. As I crossed the threshold, it turned toward the door. Before I did. As I reached for the light switch, its hand was already on the wall. As I opened my mouth to scream, it spoke, not in my voice, in Elias's, dry, fractured, final. You're late. I spun. He stood in the doorway, not the frail old man from the porch. This Elias was younger, gaunt, eyes bright with fever or fury, wearing the same cardigan but pristine. No mothball scent, just antiseptic and iron. He held a leather-bound journal, the Echo Protocol. You kept me waiting, he said. 29 years, 4 months, and 17 days. I counted. I don't understand, I whispered. No, he agreed, but you will. You always do, eventually. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. The lock clicked. My lock, though he hadn't touched it. Sit, he said, nodding to the armchair. I didn't move. He sighed. You're going to sit. You always sit. Right there, left side. Because the right cushion sags. You noticed it yesterday. Thought, feels like sitting on a hip bone. I had. My legs moved, without permission. I sat. He took the chair opposite, opened the journal. Pages crackled, not with age, but with something else. Static. Tension. Time isn't a river, he began, voice low, rhythmic. It's a tapestry, woven, and sometimes threads snag, loop back, overlap. In this house, this specific spot, the weave is thin, porous. Thoughts don't just happen here. They echo there. And there is adjacent. He tapped the page. Sketches, diagrams, not of circuits or stars, but of phrases, of sentences mapped like neural pathways with arrows pointing backward. I'm thirsty. Glass in the cabinet, left cabinet, top shelf. What's that noise? Radiator, pipe expansion. Happens at 8:03 always. Beneath, in tighter script. Subject C, exhibits highest resonance. Latency window, 0.7 seconds. Confirmation rate, 98.3%. He doesn't generate thought. He repeats it. From the loop. See? I whispered. Cassian, he said, the only one who ever broke the cycle, briefly, long enough to interfere. What cycle? He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine, not with malice, with exhaustion, with sorrow. You come here, you hear them, everyone echoing you. You panic, you run, you almost leave, and then you ask the question. What question? He smiled. A terrible, broken thing. What if I just say nothing? The room went silent, not quiet. Silent. The hum of the fridge downstairs cut off. The ticking of the dead clock, tick, stopped mid-beat. Even my own breath seemed to stall in my throat. Elias didn't move, just watched, waiting. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. But in the mirror, my reflection spoke, clear, calm, resigned. Too late. You already thought it. I jerked back, hitting the lamp. It toppled, shattering on the floor. Glass scattered. The bulb popped, snap. And in the sudden dimness, lit only by the streetlight bleeding through the curtains, I saw it. Not just my reflection. In the shards of broken mirror on the floor, dozens of fragments. Each showed a different version of me. One, older, gray at the temples, mouthing, "You'll try to burn the house down. It won't take." Another, younger, 8 years old, school uniform, eyes wide. "Mom's humming in the kitchen. Don't go in yet." Another, gaunt, unshaven, clutching a pill bottle. "The overdose doesn't work. You wake up here." Another, in a hospital gown, IV in arm. "They'll say it's catatonia. It's not. You're listening." And in the largest shard, Elias, not the man across from me, an older Elias, frailer, eyes milky, sitting in my chair, holding my notebook, writing. I looked at the real Elias. He was crying. "Every time," he whispered, "every iteration, you ask, you go silent, and the loop holds. Because silence is a choice, and choices echo too." He stood, walked to the mirror on the wall, pressed his palm against the glass. It didn't fog, but words appeared slowly, as if drawn by an invisible finger. "You are not the first Cassian. You are not the last. You are the echo, and the source, and the silence between." He turned to me. "The protocol isn't about stopping the echo," he said. "It's about becoming it, until the voice in your head isn't yours anymore, but the house's. Until you don't think, you repeat. Until you're not the speaker, but the space the sound travels through." He held out the journal. "Your turn." I didn't take it. I stood, walked to the door, hand on the knob. "This is it. Leave, run, don't look back." I turned. Elias stood where I'd been sitting, in my chair, wearing my sweater. His face, my face, was calm. He looked at me, not with fear, with pity. And he said softly the words I had just formed in my mind, unspoken, desperate. "Please, let me go." I opened the door, stepped into the hall. It wasn't the hallway of the house. It was the library, the same carol, the same book. The echo chamber, open to page 87, and in the chair across from me, younger, terrified, just arriving. He looked up, saw me, and before he could speak, I said, the words dry, practiced, heavy with decades of repetition, "You're going to ask if we have any records on the Sycamore Lane house?" He froze, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, the exact expression I'd worn 29 years ago. I reached under the desk, pulled out the manila folder, slid it across. Foresee who asked the right question too late. The loop holds, it always does, because the scariest thing isn't hearing what you're about to say. It's realizing you already said it a long time ago, and no one's listening anymore. They're just waiting for you to catch up. And that's where this story ends. Let's move on to the next one. I remember dying, but everyone says I'm fine. The shower water should have been hot, scalding, enough to burn the memory of ice water out of my bones. But it wasn't. It ran lukewarm and thin from the faucet, the same weak pressure that had plagued this apartment since I moved in after Clara left. I stood under it shivering, scrubbing my arms raw. My left forearm wouldn't clean. No matter how hard I scrubbed, how much soap I used, the skin remained stained a faint watery blue, like drowned flesh. And when the steam thickened, curling around me like grave mist, I could still feel it. The crushing weight of the river current, the shocking cold as it filled my mouth, the desperate flail of my legs against the muddy bottom as my lungs burned. I remembered the exact moment the world went silent, the bubbles rising past my face, silver and fragile, the streetlights above the water's surface, blurred and distant, like stars in a dream. The thought that cut through the panic, sharp and final. This is how I die. I turned off the water. The dripping echoed in the tiny bathroom. I toweled off slowly, avoiding the mirror. I didn't need to see the hollows under my eyes, the grayish pallor that clung to my skin no matter how much I slept. I knew what was there. I dressed in the bedroom, pulling on clean sweatpants and a t-shirt. The blue stain on my forearm had faded to a ghostly watermark, barely visible, just like the memory everyone insisted wasn't real. Downstairs, Mrs. Gable was feeding pigeons on her stoop. Her laundromat smelled of damp cotton and industrial soap. She beamed when she saw me. "Eli, you look better today. Color in your cheeks." Her eyes were sharp behind her thick glasses, missing nothing. The tremor in my hands, the way I gripped the railing too tightly. I forced a smile. "Just tired, Mrs. Gable?" "Bad dreams." She patted my arm. "Honey, you haven't slept at all since that little tumble last week. Finch said you slipped on the fire escape, hit your head something awful. Lucky you landed in the bushes." Her voice dropped, conspiratorial. "Heard the ambulance sirens myself, scared the daylights out of me, but you bounced back quick, like a cat." She chuckled, offering me a stale cookie from her pocket. "No broken bones, no concussion. Doctor said it was a miracle." I took the cookie, nodded. A miracle. The word tasted like river mud. I hadn't slipped on the fire escape. I'd jumped, or rather, he had jumped. The man who lived in this body before the water took him. Before I woke up in the hospital bed, tubes in my arms, the sterile smell of antiseptic stinging my nose, and a doctor with calm eyes telling me, "You're safe now, Mr. Vance. You fell, but you're fine, perfectly fine." I'd known it was a lie before the words were fully out. The memories weren't of falling. They were of sinking, of giving up, of the river pulling me down into its cold, dark embrace, while the city lights glittered like indifferent stars above. I walked to work. Data Key Solutions. Cubicle 4B. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a sound that used to be background noise. Now it felt like the river's roar, muffled but insistent. Brenda from HR intercepted me at the coffee machine. "Eli, glad you're back. We've all been so worried." Her smile was perfect, professional. Her eyes flickered over my face, cataloging. "Dr. Evans called this morning. He's pleased with your progress. Said the dissociative episode was severe, but the new meds are working." She slid a manila folder across the counter. My employee file, open to a page stamped. Medical leave, approved. Dates circled, October 12th to October 19th. Today was October 20th. "Just a fall, sweetie," she repeated, her voice syrupy with concern. "You blacked out. Hit your head. It's understandable you'd have some vivid dreams. Trauma does that." She patted my hand. Her touch was warm, real. But the memory of icy water closing over my head was more real. I remembered the weight of my soaked clothes dragging me down, the panic as my foot snagged on a submerged branch. The last thought before the darkness took me, let go. It's easier to let go. I spent the day inputting insurance claims. Numbers blurred on the screen. Every time I blinked, I saw bubbles rising. The coppery taste of fear flooded my mouth. At lunch, Mark from accounting slid into the booth across from me in the break room. "Dude, you okay? You look like hell." I stared at my sandwich, turkey and avocado on rye. Clara's favorite. I hadn't eaten avocado in years. "I remember dying, Mark," I said quietly, the words scraping my throat raw. "In the river, last Tuesday night. I jumped off the bridge." Mark's smile froze. Then it crumpled into pity. "Whoa, heavy. Finch told us you had a bad fall off the fire escape. Concussion, maybe? Dr. Evans said." "I didn't fall off the fire escape." The words came out too loud. Heads turned. Mark leaned in, voice low, urgent. "Eli, listen. Finch called the cops. They found you curled up at the base of the Sycamore Street Bridge at 3 a.m. You were dry. Your shoes were clean. No mud, no river smell. Just confused, shaken. Talking about water?" He squeezed my arm. "The river's 3 blocks away. The bridge railing's 8 feet high. You'd have broken bones. You have nothing, not a scratch." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, slid it toward me. A photo. Me, sitting on a gurney under the bridge lights. My clothes were dry. My hair was neatly combed. My face was pale, terrified but unmarked. No water in my clothes, no mud on my shoes, just Eli Vance looking lost. "See? You were never in the water. It was a nightmare, a bad one, but it wasn't real." I stared at the photo. My own face stared back, hollow-eyed, yes, but dry, unharmed. The blue stain on my forearm was hidden under my sleeve. I remembered the cold metal of the gurney under my palms. I remembered the EMT's voice. "Easy now. You're safe. Just a fall." But I also remembered the water filling my lungs. The two memories clashed like broken glass in my skull. Which was the dream? The dry gurney under the bridge lights, or the suffocating dark of the river bottom? The copper taste surged back, thick and metallic. I pushed the phone away. "I remember the cold," I whispered. "I remember the bubbles." Mark's expression hardened. "Dr. Evans says that's the dissociation talking, the brain protecting itself from the trauma of the fall, creating a narrative to explain the fear." He stood up, gathering his lunch. "Get checked again, Eli, seriously. This isn't healthy. You're scaring people." He walked away. The break room chatter resumed, but glances thrown my way were different now, warier, pitying. I saw Brenda watching from her office doorway. Her smile was tight, professional. She made a small, deliberate motion with her finger against her temple. Crazy. I left work early. The city streets felt alien, too bright, too loud. The roar of buses, the shriek of brakes, the blare of car horns, it all blurred into the sound of rushing water. I found myself walking toward the river, not the Sycamore Street Bridge where they'd found me dry, the old stone footbridge near the botanical gardens, where I'd jumped, where I'd died. The afternoon sun glinted off the slow-moving water. Couples strolled hand in hand. Joggers panted past. No one looked twice at the man standing rigidly on the bridge, hands gripping the cold stone railing. I leaned out, looked down. The water was murky green, swirling around pilings crusted with riverweed. I could see the reflection of the sky, fractured and rippling. And in that reflection, for a split second, I saw it, not my own face, but face bloated and pale, waterlogged, eyes wide and white like stones, mouth open in a silent scream. It vanished as a barge chugged past, churning the water into froth. I stumbled back, gasping. A young woman walking a golden retriever glanced at me, frowning. "You okay, mister?" Her dog whined, pulling toward the railing, hackles raised, staring at the spot where I'd seen the face. I ran, not home, to St. Vincent's Hospital. The ER waiting room smelled of bleach and despair. I waited 2 hours, my leg bouncing uncontrollably. When the young resident finally called my name, I blurted it out before he could sit down. I died last Tuesday in the river, under the Sycamore Street Bridge. I remember it, the cold, the bubbles, the silence. I rolled up my sleeve, showing him the faint blue stain on my forearm. "See? Drowned flesh. It won't wash off." The resident, Dr. Chen, didn't flinch. He examined the stain with calm professionalism. "Interesting discoloration," he murmured, pressing it lightly. "Looks like a mild bruise, or possibly a reaction to laundry detergent, common in cheap apartments with old pipes." He pulled up my chart on his tablet. "Mr. Vance, your records are clear. You presented to the ER last Tuesday night after a fall from your fire escape, approximately 8 feet. You sustained a minor scalp laceration and a bruised wrist. No fractures, no signs of submersion, no hypothermia, your clothes were dry, your core temperature was normal." He swiveled the tablet toward me. "Scans, X-rays, a CT scan of my head, all pristine, no trauma, no water in the lungs, no residue of river sediment under my nails. Nothing. Just Eli Vance, 32, with a minor head injury and a story no one believed. Dr. Evans has you on a low-dose antipsychotic for the dissociative episodes," Dr. Chen continued gently. "He believes the fall triggered a stress response. Your brain created a detailed, immersive fantasy to cope with the fear of falling. It's not uncommon. The blue mark, likely residual bruising from when you hit the ground. It'll fade." "But I remember the water," I insisted, my voice cracking. "I remember letting go. I remember the light fading." "You remember a dream," he corrected, his tone kind but firm. "A very vivid, traumatic dream. Your brain conflated the fear of falling with the fear of drowning. It's a protective mechanism." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're not crazy, Eli. You're healing. Trust the process. Trust the facts." He wrote a new prescription, stronger antipsychotics, and patted my back as he ushered me out. "Go home. Rest. Talk to Dr. Evans tomorrow." The sliding glass doors hissed shut behind me, sealing me out of the sterile, factual world. The river's roar filled my ears again. I looked down at my forearm. The blue stain seemed darker in the harsh afternoon light, like a fingerprint left by the dead. Dr. Evans's office was all beige carpet and framed motivational quotes. "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." I sat rigidly in the plush chair, staring at the Rorschach blot on his desk. He listened quietly as I described the river, the bubbles, the face in the water. He took notes, nodded thoughtfully. "The persistence of the memory is significant, Eli," he said finally, steepling his fingers. But persistence doesn't equal reality. Our brains are remarkable storytellers. After trauma, they weave narratives to make sense of the senseless. Your fall was terrifying. Your subconscious reached for the most primal fear it could find: drowning. It's not uncommon for near-death experiences, even imagined ones, to feel hyper-real. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. Here's what we know for certain. You were found dry under the Sycamore Street Bridge. Your physical exam showed 0 signs of submersion. Your medical records are consistent with a minor fall, not a near drowning. Your memories are inconsistent with the physical evidence. Therefore, the memories are unreliable. He slid a brochure across the desk. Understanding Dissociative Amnesia. Reclaiming Your Narrative. The medication will help. Quiet the intrusive thoughts. Give it time. And Eli? Stop going to the river. Avoid triggers. Your mind needs safety to heal. I took the brochure, didn't read it, walked home in a daze. The streets felt tilted, unreal, like a stage set. I passed a newsstand. The headline screamed, "Mysterious Death in River, Body Found Near Sycamore Street Bridge." My blood froze. I grabbed the paper. October 19th, yesterday. A young man, mid-30s, no ID, found tangled in debris near the pilings, cause of death, drowning. Time of death estimated 2:00 a.m. to 4 a.m. Tuesday night. My night. I fumbled for coins, bought the paper, my hands shaking so badly I tore the pages. I hurried home, locking the door behind me, drawing the curtains. I spread the paper on the kitchen table. The grainy photo of the recovered body, bloated, face obscured by riverweed, sent a jolt through me. Not my face, a stranger's. But the clothes, waterlogged jeans, a dark hoodie. It could have been me. The article mentioned a witness, an elderly man walking his dog at 3 a.m. who saw a tall figure jump, but couldn't identify them in the dark. The police were treating it as suicide. No foul play suspected. I sank to the floor. The newspaper crumpled in my lap. The blue stain on my forearm pulsed faintly, cold against my skin. The copper taste flooded my mouth. This was proof. This was the truth. I died. This other man, this John Doe, had died instead. Or I was John Doe, stolen from the river, dumped dry on the bridge, given Eli Vance's life like a hand-me-down coat that didn't quite fit. The apartment felt suffocating. The peeling wallpaper seemed to breathe. The old pipes groaned like a dying thing. I needed air. I needed to see the bridge. Now I ran, ignoring the ache in my chest that wasn't there before, the strange lightness in my limbs. The city blurred past. At the Sycamore Street Bridge, police tape fluttered in the breeze, cordoning off a section near the railing. 2 cops stood guard, bored. I approached cautiously. "Excuse me, I think I might have seen something the night that man died." One cop, a heavy-set man with a mustache, eyed me. "You with the media? We're not giving interviews." "No, I live nearby. I saw a guy jump Tuesday night around 3 a.m. The cop's partner, younger, leaned in. "Yeah? What did he look like?" "Tall," I said, my voice tight. "Wearing a dark hoodie, he just climbed over and let go. No hesitation." The young cop exchanged a glance with his partner. The older one sighed. "Look, pal, we got that report. From an old guy walking his poodle. Said the same thing. But here's the thing." He pointed to the railing. "No scuff marks. No fibers caught on the metal. No witness saw anyone approach the bridge that night on the cameras." He gestured to a small, weatherproof camera mounted on a lamppost. We checked, clear, from midnight to 5 a.m. No one came near this railing except the old man and his dog. And you, he tapped his notebook. You, Eli Vance, found sitting right here at 3:17 a.m., dry as a bone, babbling about a jump you didn't take. Security footage confirms it. You were alone. You never went near the railing. He closed his notebook with a snap. Grief does funny things. That John Doe, he was your neighbor, wasn't he? Apartment 3B, 2 floors down. Real quiet guy. Worked nights. You probably barely knew him, but losing someone close, it messes with your head. Makes you see things. Makes you feel things that aren't yours. He put a firm hand on my shoulder. Go home, son. Take your meds. Let the dead rest. I walked away, numb. Apartment 3B? I'd never noticed who lived there. Had I seen him in the hall? At the mailboxes? His face in the newspaper? Was a stranger's? But the blue stain on my arm burned cold. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights cast long, shifting shadows on the wall. The shadows looked wrong, thicker, hungrier. At 2:17 a.m., the time the cop said I was found on the bridge, the shadows in the corner of my room detached. Not my shadow, something else. A deeper darkness, coalescing into a shape, tall, thin, dripping. It didn't move toward me. It pointed, not at me, at the closet. Its form was indistinct, wavering like heat haze, but the finger was clear, accusing. I stood slowly, my heart hammering against ribs that felt too fragile. I opened the closet. Nothing, just coats. I pushed them aside, and there, behind my winter parka, taped to the back wall, was a small waterproof bag. I hadn't put it there. I tore it open. Inside was a wallet. Waterlogged, swollen. The ID photo showed a man with my eyes, my jawline, but not my face. His name, Daniel Shaw. Address, Apartment 3B, 17 Sycamore Street, the John Doe from the river. Tucked behind the ID was a folded piece of paper. My own handwriting covered it, jagged and frantic. I took his place. The water gave him to me. It wanted a life. I offered mine. It took his instead. I am not Eli Vance. I am the space where he drowned. I remember the bubbles. I remember the letting go. They call it a miracle. It was a theft. Burn this. Forget. But I can't forget the cold. I can't forget the light fading. They say I'm fine. I am not fine. I am Daniel Shaw's ghost wearing Eli's skin. The river is in my bones. It is always hungry. I dropped the note. It fluttered to the floor like a dead leaf. The dripping shadow was gone. Only moonlight pooled on the floorboards. I sank to my knees, the wallet clutched in my hand. Daniel Shaw's face smiled up at me from the ID, a life cut short, a life I'd stolen. The blue stain on my forearm was a deep, unnatural indigo now, spreading like a bruise toward my elbow. The copper taste was a river in my mouth. I remembered, not just the drowning, the bargain. Standing on the bridge, the river whispering up through the cracks in the concrete, a voice like wet stones grinding. Together, one life for another, your pain for his peace, jump, and we will give you back the life you lost. Clara's face swam in my mind, her laughter, the scent of her hair, the warmth of her hand in mine, the loneliness that had hollowed me out after she left. I'd stepped onto the railing, closed my eyes. Take me, give me back what I lost. The cold hit, the current pulled, and in the dark water, something cold and ancient wrapped around my ankles, not to drag me down, but to push. I broke the surface gasping, not on the riverbank, but dry and shivering at the base of the Sycamore Street Bridge. Eli Vance's life flooded back into me, his memories, his apartment, his job. But beneath them, like a deep, cold current, flowed Daniel Shaw's final moments. The river hadn't given me back my life. It had given me his, and it was still hungry. I called Dr. Evans at 3 a.m. His voicemail was full. I called Brenda, straight to voicemail. I called Mark. Same. I sat on the floor, Daniel Shaw's wallet in my lap, the note crumpled in my fist. The street lights outside flickered, died. The apartment plunged into darkness. Only the glow of the digital clock on the stove, 3:17 a.m., the time I was found, the time Daniel Shaw died. The shadows in the corners deepened. Not one shadow, many, dozens, thin, dripping shapes, coalescing from the gloom. They didn't point. They reached. Cold, watery fingers brushed my skin. The whisper filled the room, not in my ears, but in the marrow of my bones. He is not yours. Give him back. The bargain was for one. You took two. The river is hungry. I scrambled back, hitting the wall. I didn't know. I just wanted to stop hurting. The pain is the price. The voices hissed, a chorus of wet echoes. You stole his rest. Now you will rest in the deep places where the light does not reach. The shadows surged forward, not to touch me, to become me. I felt them seeping into my skin, my bones, my breath. The blue stain on my arm spread like ink and water, swallowing my hand, my wrist. The copper taste became the taste of mud and decay. I remembered Daniel Shaw's last thought, not fear, but relief. Relief at the cold. Relief at the silence. Relief at the letting go. And I understood. The river didn't want Daniel Shaw back. It wanted me. It wanted the life I'd stolen. It wanted the pain I'd tried to bury. It wanted the space where Eli Vance had drowned his grief, and Daniel Shaw had drowned his life. It wanted the hollow place inside me. I stopped fighting. Let the cold fill me. Let the shadows pull me down. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me whole was my own hand, raised in surrender. The blue stain was gone. My skin was pale, unmarked, clean, and on the floor where I'd been sitting, Daniel Shaw's wallet lay open. His ID photo smiled up, peaceful, at peace. The note was gone. Only a single waterlogged maple leaf rested beside the wallet. Out of season, out of place, glistening with river water. Outside, the streetlights flickered back on. Dawn bled gray over the city. In the apartment above Mrs. Gable's laundromat, the shower ran. Lukewarm water streamed down the tiles. A man stood beneath it, scrubbing his arms. His left forearm was perfectly clean, unblemished. He turned off the water, dried himself, dressed. He walked downstairs, nodding to Mrs. Gable on her stoop. "Morning, Mrs. Gable. Beautiful day." His voice was calm, steady. He walked to Data Key Solutions, Cubicle 4B. He input insurance claims with quiet efficiency. At lunch, Mark from accounting joined him. "Rough night?" Mark asked, eyeing the dark circles under the man's eyes. The man smiled, a warm, easy smile. "Just dreams. Dr. Evans says they'll fade." He took a bite of his turkey and avocado sandwich, Clara's favorite. He didn't notice the faint scent of river water that clung to his skin. He didn't feel the cold spot in his chest where a heart should beat. He didn't see the shadow that followed him, a shadow that didn't quite match his shape, a shadow that dripped faintly on the linoleum floor, a shadow that pointed not at the world, but at the hollow place inside his own chest. He was fine. Perfectly fine. The doctor said so. The records proved it. The river had taken its due. And the man who remembered dying, he was finally at rest, deep in the cold, dark water where the light never reached, where the bubbles rose like silver prayers and the silence was a blanket. The apartment was quiet, the shadows were still, and on the kitchen table, untouched, sat a new prescription bottle. The label read, Eli Vance, take one daily for dissociative episodes. The pills inside were untouched, unneeded. The man didn't need them anymore. He remembered nothing. He was fine. He was home. He was empty. The river had won. And the thing wearing Eli Vance's skin smiled, tasting the copper on its tongue, and reached for another bite of sandwich. The hunger was quiet now, but it was never gone. It was only waiting for the next life, the next bargain, the next hollow place to fill. The shadow on the wall didn't move. It didn't need to. It was already inside, already home, already hungry. The silence in the apartment wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of the deep water, the silence after the last bubble rises, the silence of a life stolen and a life given back, empty, perfect, and utterly, terrifyingly fine. And that's where this story ends. Let's move on to the next one. A stranger sent me my future diary, and today's entry is missing. The package arrived on a Tuesday. Rain slashed against the window of my studio apartment, a shoebox above Mrs. Gable's laundromat that smelled perpetually of wet wool and detergent. I'd just gotten home from another soul-crushing shift at Data Key Solutions, where I processed insurance claims for people whose lives were reduced to denial codes and deductible percentages. My hand still smelled faintly of toner from the malfunctioning copier. The box sat on my doormat, wrapped in brown paper, no return address, just my name and apartment number, written in precise looping cursive that looked unnervingly familiar. Like my own handwriting after 3 cups of coffee, but smoother, calmer. I almost threw it away. Unsolicited packages are how you get anthrax or crypto mining scams these days. But the weight felt wrong for anthrax, light, almost papery. And the handwriting, it tugged at something. I brought it. Inside, dumped my keys and damp coat on the rickety table by the door, and slit the tape with a paring knife from the kitchenette. Inside, nestled in crumpled newsprint, was a book, not a notebook, a book, bound in cracked dark green leather, the cover worn smooth at the edges. No title, just a single silver clasp holding it shut. It felt cold, heavy. I undid the clasp. The pages were thick, creamy paper, filled edge to edge with that same looping cursive. My breath hitched. It was my handwriting, every slant of the Y, every slightly too large capital I. The way I dotted my I's with a deliberate heavy tap. Impossible. I hadn't written anything longer than a grocery list in years. I flipped to the first page. The date in the top right corner made my stomach drop. October 17th, 2020 is it qual. Today's date, but the page was blank. Completely, utterly blank. Not a single word, just pristine, untouched paper. Confusion warred with a prickle of unease. I flipped back. The previous page was dated October 16th, 2020, yesterday, and it described my day with terrifying accuracy. Woke at 6:15 a.m. to Mrs. Gable's cat yowling outside. Shower lukewarm again. Burned the toast. Took bus number 42, the one with the broken AC that smells like feet. Sat behind the woman in the neon yellow raincoat who hums show tunes off key. Got to Data Key at 8:47. Brenda from HR cornered me by the coffee machine. Something about updated W-9 forms. Felt a migraine coming on around 10 a.m. Ate the sad tuna sandwich from the deli downstairs for lunch. The copier jammed again during the Henderson file. Left at 5:02 p.m. Rained harder on the walk home. Mrs. Gable yelled at Mr. Peterson about his dryer lint trap. Ordered greasy lo mein. Watched reruns until I fell asleep on the couch at 10:30. Every detail was there. The neon yellow raincoat, the specific grating hum of memory from Cats, the exact time the copier spat out my documents like confetti, the texture of the cheap lo mein noodles. My hands started trembling. I flipped forward. The page for October 15th detailed my weekend, boring, accurate. October 14th, the awkward text exchange with my sister about our mom's birthday. October 13th, the leak of faucet I'd been meaning to fix. It went back months, years even. Entries about job interviews I'd bombed, a minor fender bender last spring, the exact words my landlord used when he warned me about late rent. It was my life, my past life, down to the brand of ibuprofen I kept in the bathroom cabinet. But today's page was blank. I slammed the book shut, the clap of leather loud in the small, quiet apartment. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Who sent this? How? The handwriting, it was mine. But I hadn't written this. I couldn't have. I didn't know what today held beyond the usual grind. Unless this was some kind of elaborate, deeply unsettling prank. Maybe Mark from accounting? He'd always had a weird sense of humor. But Mark didn't know about Brenda's W-9 forms cornering or the specific hum of the woman on the bus. No one did. I called Mark, straight to voicemail. I texted him, "Dude, did you send me a weird leather book?" No reply. I called my sister, Chloe. She answered on the third ring, breathless. "Mark? Hey, what's up? You sound weird." "Chloe, did you send me something? A book? In the mail?" "A book? No. Why? You okay? You sound pale." She paused. "Wait, is this about that weird envelope you got yesterday? The one with no return address?" My blood turned to ice. "Yesterday? What envelope?" "The one you texted me about. You said it was heavy, smelled like old paper, and you were freaked out because the handwriting looked like yours but wasn't. You said you hadn't opened it yet." "I didn't get any envelope yesterday, Chloe, I swear." Silence on the line. Then, very slowly, "Mark, I have the screenshot. You texted me at 7:03 p.m. last night. Picture of the envelope on your doormat. Said it gave you the creeps." "I didn't send that text, Chloe. I was home alone all night. Watched The Office reruns. Fell asleep on the couch, just like the book said I would." Another pause, longer this time. Her voice was tight when she spoke again. "Mark, look, maybe you're stressed. Work's been hell. Maybe you just forgot you texted me or sleep texted." "I don't sleep text, Chloe. You know that." My voice cracked. "The book said I fell asleep on the couch at 10:30. How would it know that if I didn't write it?" "Okay," she said, her tone shifting to careful calm. "Okay, maybe it's a coincidence, or one of those AI things. You know, like those apps that generate journals based on your phone data. Scrape your calendar, your texts." "I don't have a calendar app. I use a physical planner, and it doesn't know about Mrs. Gable's cat or the copier jamming on the Henderson file. It knows everything, Chloe, even the taste of the lo mein." "Mark, breathe. Just don't open it again. Put it in a drawer. Throw it out. We'll talk tomorrow, okay? I'm worried about you." I hung up. The apartment felt suddenly airless. The hum of the refrigerator too loud. I stared at the green leather book on the table. The blank page for today glared at me. Why was it blank? Was it a mistake? Had the sender run out of time? Or was it deliberate, a trap? I needed proof this wasn't just me cracking under pressure. I needed an event the book couldn't have predicted. Something random. I grabbed my jacket and bolted out the door, down the creaking stairs, past the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of dryers, and into the rain-slicked street. I walked 10 blocks, past the usual bus stop, to a tiny, dingy pawn shop I'd never noticed before, tucked between a boarded-up bakery and a laundromat that wasn't Mrs. Gable's. The bell jangled as I pushed inside. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of gray light from a high window. The owner, a man with thick glasses and ink-stained fingers, barely looked up from a disassembled clock. "Can I help you?" he rasped. I need something specific. Tell me, what's the most worthless thing you have in here right now?" He blinked. Worthless? Yeah, the thing nobody would ever buy. The thing you'd throw out tomorrow. He scratched his stubble, considering. Then he shuffled to a shelf crammed with junk and pulled out a small chipped ceramic figurine. A sad-looking frog wearing a top hat, one leg broken off at the knee. "This," he said, "paid $1 for it at an estate sale. Been here 15 years. No one wants the damn thing. You can have it for $1." I bought it. The cold chipped ceramic felt alien in my palm. I walked straight home, the rain plastering my hair to my forehead, the frog clutched tight. I didn't take the bus. I needed the walk. I needed the randomness of the rain, the specific ache in my left knee from the damp. I needed proof my choices were still mine. Back in the apartment, dripping on the thin rug, I opened the diary again. My hands were steady now, cold with certainty. I flipped to today's date, October 17th, 2026. Still blank. I turned to tomorrow's page, October 18th, 2026. Woke up with the ceramic frog on the pillow beside me, felt its cold weight, the crack along its back. Remembered buying it yesterday at Hank's Pawn and Loan on Elm and Fifth. The old man with the ink-stained fingers called it worthless. It isn't. It's proof. Proof that the book isn't just recording. It's anticipating. But today was blank. Why? Did I do something? Did I stop something? Or is the blankness the point? The silence before what? I hid the frog under the loose floorboard near the radiator. If someone comes looking for it, they won't find it. But I think they already know. I think the blank page is a warning or an invitation. The rain hasn't stopped. It sounds like fingers tapping on the window pane. Tapping, tapping, tapping. The entry cut off mid-sentence. The ink was smudged, as if the writer had been interrupted or had dropped the pen. I stared at the words. Hank's Pawn and Loan on Elm and Fifth. I'd never heard of it. I just walked until I found a pawn shop. It was on Elm and Fifth. I hadn't noticed the street sign. Hank. The owner hadn't given his name. The broken leg on the frog, the loose floorboard near the radiator. I'd never noticed a loose floorboard. But when I dropped to my knees and pried at the corner of the board Chloe had tripped over last Christmas, it lifted easily, dusty insulation beneath. And there, tucked in the corner, was a small, damp-stained envelope. Not the one from yesterday. This one was older, yellowed, addressed in that same lupin cursive. For when you find the blank page. My breath came in short gasps. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet. of paper covered in the same handwriting, but this wasn't an entry. It was a note. Mark. You're reading this because you found the gap, the blank page. That's where it starts. That's where you start fighting back. They don't like the gaps. They need the story to be seamless, continuous, predictable. The diary isn't a record. It's a leash. They feed it details, your routines, your fears, the trivial data points scraped from your life, and it constructs the narrative. It becomes your reality. But it can't construct what hasn't happened yet. Not truly, not when the subject resists. I was you 6 months ago. I found my blank page. I bought a spool of red thread from a gas station I'd never seen before. The diary described it perfectly the next day. I knew then it was watching, waiting. I started doing small things, random things, taking different buses, ordering different coffee, talking to strangers. The entries grew fuzzy, uncertain, sometimes wrong. That's when the tapping started. At first, just at night, like rain, then inside the walls, then inside my head. They don't like unpredictability. It frays the narrative. I hid this note where you'd look, where the pattern would lead you. They know you have the frog. They know about the floorboard. They know everything you do. But they don't know what you think. Not yet. That's the only space left. The gap. The blank page. Don't fill it for them. Don't let them write today. Burn the diary. Burn it now. Don't read tomorrow's entry. Don't give them the script. Run. Go somewhere they can't find the pattern. But hurry. The tapping gets louder when they're close. Listen. Can you hear it? Another mark. The paper slipped from my fingers. The silence in the apartment was absolute. No rain on the window, no hum from the fridge, just a low rhythmic thump, 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 coming from inside the wall beside the radiator, steady, deliberate, like a slow heartbeat or fingers tapping. I looked at the diary. Open on the table, tomorrow's entry lay exposed, the smudged ink, the interrupted sentence, tapping. The thumping in the wall sped up. Thump, 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 thump. Panic seized me. I grabbed the diary, its cold leather burning my palms. I stumbled to the tiny kitchenette, yanked open the drawer where I kept matches for the faulty pilot light on the stove. My hand shook violently as I struck one. The flame sputtered, died. Again. The match flared. I touched it to the corner of the first page. The paper didn't catch. The flame died the moment it touched the creamy page, leaving only a faint, acrid smell and a tiny black curl of ash. I tried again and again. The matches burned my fingers, but the pages remained pristine, unmarked, untouchable. The thumping in the wall was a frantic drumming now, shaking the loose floorboard under my feet. Dust sifted from the ceiling. I hurled the diary across the room. It hit the opposite wall with a soft thud and lay open on the floor. I ran to the window, fumbling with the stiff latch. Rain lashed the glass. The streetlights below cast long, watery shadows. Normal, mundane, safe. I turned back. The diary was gone from the floor. It sat on the table again, open, facing me. And today's page was no longer blank. Words were appearing, not written. Bleeding onto the page, dark, viscous ink spreading like a stain from the center of the paper, forming letters in that terrible, familiar hand. You tried to burn me. You always try to burn me. It never works. The story must be told. The pattern must hold. The red thread mark dropped at the gas station. I picked it up. I followed it back to him. He screams nicely. You'll hear him soon, under the tapping. He thought he broke the pattern. He didn't. He just became part of a different chapter, a cautionary tale. Your blank page wasn't a gift. It was an error, a glitch, and glitches get corrected. Look behind you. I didn't move, couldn't move. The thumping in the wall had stopped, replaced by a new sound, a wet, ragged breathing coming from the corner behind the door, the corner where the shadows were deepest, the shadows that didn't quite match the shape of the room. They were thicker, longer, stretching towards me across the floorboards, defying the angle of the single overhead light. The ink on the page kept flowing, faster now, the letters jagged, urgent. Don't turn around, don't look, it makes it stronger. Remember the frog, the worthless thing. It wasn't worthless, it was a key, a way out, but you hid it. You played by their rules, you looked for the pattern, you found the gap. And gaps attract attention. The attention that lives between the lines, the attention that hungers for the spaces where the story frays. You think you're Mark Ellery, data processor, renter of a damp studio apartment, son of Eleanor who died of cancer in 19. You're not. You're the character, the protagonist. And protagonists have arcs. Yours is ending. Turn around. See what's been waiting in the blank space all along. See what writes the words when the pen drops. See? I didn't read the rest. I couldn't. The breathing in the corner had stopped. In its place was a soft, wet, clicking sound, like bones settling, and a smell. Old paper, yes, but beneath it, the coppery tang of blood and something else. Ozone, sharp and electric, like the air after lightning. My body moved without me. Slowly, stiffly, like a marionette with tangled strings, I turned my head. The corner was empty. Relief, sharp and dizzying, flooded me. Just shadows, just stress, just... The diary snapped shut with a sound like a gunshot. I whirled back to the table. The book lay closed. The silver clasp was latched. But where the clasp met the leather cover, dark liquid welled up. Not ink, thick, red. It dripped onto the floorboards with a soft, rhythmic plink, 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 like a slow heartbeat or fingers tapping on a window pane. I looked down at my hands. My fingers were stained with the same dark red. I hadn't touched the book since I threw it. I hadn't touched anything. The dripping slowed, stopped. The silence that followed was deeper than before. Heavy, expectant. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. Then from the empty corner behind the door, a whisper. Not a voice I recognized. Not human. It was the sound of pages turning rapidly in a vast dark library, the rustle of dry leaves in a forgotten grave, the static between radio stations. Page 1. It sighed. The words weren't heard with my ears. They vibrated in my teeth, in the marrow of my bones. Begin again. The green leather diary on the table began to vibrate, faintly at first, then violently, hopping against the wooden surface like a living thing trying to escape. The silver clasp glowed with a sickly, pale light. The red stain on the cover pulsed. I backed towards the window, my legs weak. The latch was still open a crack. Rain and cold air hissed through. Freedom, reality. Mrs. Gable's dryers thumped steadily downstairs, a normal sound, a real sound. I lunged for the window, wrenching it fully open. The roar of the city street below, distant car horns, a siren wailing blocks away, was the most beautiful noise I'd ever heard. I swung my leg over the sill, the rain instantly soaking my pants. the rusty fire escape cold and slick under my palm. I looked back one last time. The diary lay still on the table. The clasp was open again. The page was blank, but not empty. Shimmering faintly in the dim light, as if written in frost or smoke, words were coalescing. He jumps. He always jumps. The fire escape is rusted through on the third landing. The fall isn't far. Broken leg. Concussion. They take him to St. Vincent's. Room 412. The nurse with the kind eyes gives him painkillers. He dreams of red thread. He dreams of tapping. He dreams of the blank page waiting for him when he wakes. The story pauses, but it does not end. It never ends. It only waits for the next mark, the next gap, the next blank page to fill, to own, to consume. Sleep now, Mark. The pattern holds. The pattern is... I didn't read the rest. I dropped onto the fire escape, the metal groaning under my weight. I scrambled down, ignoring the slippery rungs, the rain stinging my eyes. I hit the alley behind Mrs. Gable's with a jarring thud that shot pain up my spine. I ran, past overflowing dumpsters, under flickering streetlights, not stopping until I was 10 blocks away, hunched under the awning of an all-night diner, gasping, soaked to the skin, my heart trying to burst free from my chest. Inside the warm, greasy-smelling diner, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Darlene, slid a menu across the Formica table. Rough night, hon? I nodded, unable to speak. My hands were still trembling. I stared at them, clean, no red stain, just rainwater. Can I get you some coffee? Hot. Coffee, I rasped. Black, please. She brought it in a thick white mug. The heat seeped into my palms, a grounding sensation. Real. Tangible. I wrapped my fingers around it, watching the steam curl upwards, the clatter of dishes, the low murmur of late-night customers, the smell of frying onions. It was all solid, uncomplicated. Now, I reached into my jacket pocket, pulling out my phone. The screen was cracked from the jump, but it powered on. 2:17 a.m. I scrolled through my contacts. Chloe. I pressed call. It rang and rang and rang. Straight to voicemail. Her cheerful message, "Hey, it's Chloe. Leave a MSG." Sounded alien, hollow. I tried Mark from work. Same thing. Voicemail. I tried my landlord. Voicemail. Every number I dialed met the same dead end. No one was answering. Not at this hour, or not ever. Again. Paranoia, cold and slick, coiled in my gut. Was it just the hour? Or had the diary already rewritten them, erased their willingness to answer? I looked around the diner. Darlene was refilling ketchup bottles at the counter. An old man in a trucker hat dozed over a plate of cold eggs. A couple whispered fiercely in a booth near the window. Normal, all normal. Then I saw it. On the edge of my coffee mug, a tiny, almost invisible smudge. Dark red, like dried blood, or ink. I jerked my hand back as if burned. The mug clattered against the saucer. Darlene looked over, concerned. "You okay, hun? You look like you seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Just tired. Long shift." She nodded slowly, her eyes lingering on my face a fraction too long. "You want to get some pie? Cherry's good." Her voice was warm, but her eyes, they held a flicker of something else. Recognition? Calculation? Or was I just seeing patterns in the static of my fear? I pushed the coffee away. Unfinished. "No, thanks. Just a coffee." I paid the bill in crumpled singles, my fingers brushing the worn counter. As I turned to leave, Darlene called after me, her voice suddenly flat, devoid of its earlier warmth. "You left this behind." She held up the ceramic frog, the one with the broken leg, the one I'd hidden under the floorboard. Its cold, chipped surface gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Its single, painted eye stared blankly at nothing. I froze. I don't know what that is. Darlene's smile didn't reach her eyes. Sure you do, Mark. It's yours. Always was. You just forgot where you left it. She placed it gently on the counter. Take it. Things have a way of finding their way back to where they belong, especially the worthless things. I backed out of the diner, the little brass bell jangling like a death knell above the door. The rain had lessened to a drizzle. The city street was empty. No cars, no distant sirens, no sound at all except the dripping of water from the awning and the frantic thudding of my own heart. I didn't look back at the diner window. I couldn't. I just walked fast, turning corners at random, putting distance between me and the frog, between me and the blank page, between me and the tapping that I could still feel vibrating in my teeth, even over the city sounds slowly returning, the rumble of a distant bus, the bark of a dog. I walked for hours. Dawn was a gray smear on the horizon when I found myself standing on a bridge overlooking the river. The water churned dark and cold below. The first commuter trains rattled past on the tracks beside me, shaking the railing under my hands. Normal life resuming. I leaned against the railing, breathing in the damp, metallic air. Exhaustion pulled at my bones. I was safe, out in the open, in the light. The diary couldn't follow me here, could it? I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone again. The cracked screen. I needed to call someone, anyone, a crisis hotline, a police non-emergency line. I scrolled blindly, my thumb hovering over 911. Then I saw it, reflected in the dark, rain-streaked surface of the phone screen. Not my own haggard reflection. Behind me, standing perfectly still on the empty sidewalk, was a figure, tall, thin, dressed in a long, old-fashioned coat that seemed to absorb the gray dawn light. Its face was indistinct, blurred, like a photograph left out in the rain, but in its hand it held a book. Bound in cracked dark green leather, the silver clasp caught the weak light, and it was writing. Its hand moved swiftly across the open page, the pen a blur. I couldn't see the words in the reflection, but I felt them form in my own mind, cold and certain. He stands on the bridge, watching the water, thinking of jumping, thinking it would end the story. It wouldn't. It would only turn the page. He feels watched. He is right. He turns around now. He sees me. He always sees me. Then he runs. He always runs. Back to the beginning. Back to the blank page. The pattern resets. The story continues. Sleep now, Mark. The pattern. I whirled around. The sidewalk was empty. Utterly, completely empty. No figure, no coat, no green book, just wet pavement gleaming under the street lights, and the distant wail of a train whistle. I spun back to the railing, gripping it until my knuckles turned white. My breath came in ragged gasps. It wasn't real. A hallucination. Stress. Sleep deprivation. The lingering terror of the diary. I looked down at the churning river, dark water swallowing the reflection of the sky, swallowing everything. Then I saw it, floating gently on the current, caught in an eddy near the concrete piling, a small chipped ceramic frog. Its single painted eye stared up at the gray sky, one leg broken off at the knee. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the pavement with a sharp crack, the screen shattering completely. I didn't flinch. I just stared at the frog, bobbing on the dark water, From the pocket of my soaked jacket, a new sound began, faint at first, then louder, rhythmic, insistent. Thump, thump, thump. Not from the wall, not from the corner, from inside my own chest, my own heartbeat, but wrong, too slow, too heavy, like something else was beating inside me, something that had been waiting in the silence, something that knew the story by heart. I closed my eyes. The words formed behind my eyelids, written in that familiar looping hand on a field of perfect, terrifying white. Today's entry begins now, and that's where this story ends. Let's move on to the next one. I rented a room and forgot my name by the third night. The ad was buried deep in the classifieds, the kind of listing you only find when desperation overrides common sense. Room for rent, quiet street, very affordable, utilities included. No photos, just an address on the outskirts of town, in a neighborhood that seemed to have been forgotten by progress decades ago. The rent was impossibly low, a fraction of what I'd been paying for a shoebox apartment downtown. My savings were bleeding out after the layoff, and the thought of couch surfing indefinitely made my skin crawl. So, against the screaming voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother's, I called the number. The man who answered was named Mr. Henderson. His voice was dry, papery, and he spoke in clipped sentences that offered no warmth. He didn't ask for references, didn't want to meet me first, just told me to come by that afternoon with the first month's rent in cash. The address led me to a 2-story Victorian house, once grand, but now sagging under the weight of neglect. Paint peeled like sunburnt skin from the clapboard siding. Several windows were boarded up with mismatched plywood. The front porch groaned under my weight as I approached the heavy oak door. It opened before I could knock. Mr. Henderson was older than I expected, maybe in his late 70s, with watery eyes that didn't quite focus and skin the color of old parchment. He wore a threadbare cardigan, despite the mild afternoon. He didn't invite me in. He just gestured vaguely towards the interior with a trembling hand. Top of the stairs, second door on the left. Yours, keys in the lock, rent's due first of the month. No visitors, no noise after 10. The basement is strictly off limits. Do not go down there. His gaze drifted past me, down the overgrown path to the street, as if expecting someone else, or something else. The room was acceptable. Barely. It held a narrow bed with a thin mattress, a scarred wooden dresser missing one knob, and a single, dusty window overlooking a tangled, weed-choked backyard. The air smelled faintly of mildew and something else, a dry, almost chemical odor I couldn't place. The walls were a sickly yellow, stained with watermarks that looked like Rorschach blots in the dim light, filtering through the grimy window. There was no closet, just a hook on the back of the door. The single overhead light fixture held a bare bulb that flickered ominously when I flipped the switch. It was cheap. It was bleak. It was all I could afford. Mr. Henderson vanished into a darkened room on the first floor without another word, leaving me standing in the hallway with my single suitcase. The silence of the house was profound, not peaceful, but heavy, oppressive, like the air itself was thick and resistant. I dropped my bag on the bed, the springs groaning in protest. As I started unpacking my meager belongings, clothes, a few books, my laptop, I kept glancing at the door. The hallway outside my room was dark, the only light coming from my flickering bulb. I had the distinct, unsettling feeling that the shadows near the top of the stairs were deeper than they should be, as if they were clinging to the walls. That first night, the sounds began, not loud, not immediately terrifying, just wrong. Lying in the unfamiliar bed, the thin blanket pulled up to my chin, I heard it. A scratching, not the skittering of mice in the walls. I knew that sound from my old place. This was slower, deliberate. It seemed to come from the wall behind the headboard. Scritch, 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 pause, scritch. Like fingernails or maybe a blunt knife dragging slowly across plaster. I sat up, heart hammering against my ribs. Hello? My voice sounded thin, reedy, swallowed by the thick silence of the room. The scratching stopped instantly. I waited, holding my breath, straining my ears. Nothing. Just the oppressive quiet. I told myself it was a house settling, old pipes, rats, despite the chemical smell. I eventually fell into a fitful sleep, jumping at every creak of the ancient timbers. The next morning, the house felt even quieter. I didn't see Mr. Henderson. A plate with dry toast and a cup of weak, lukewarm tea appeared on the small table in the cramped, gloomy kitchen downstairs around 8. No note. I ate quickly, the silence pressing in. The chemical smell was stronger here, mixed with dust and something vaguely sweet that turned my stomach. I spent the day wandering the town, trying to find work, trying to forget the scratching. But the image of the dark, shadowed hallway kept intruding. That afternoon, when I returned, the plate was gone. The house felt colder. The air seemed thicker, harder to breathe. I noticed the basement door for the first time. A heavy, scarred wooden door at the end of the first-floor hallway, partially obscured by a moth-eaten curtain. A heavy padlock hung open on it, but the door itself looked immovable, warped in its frame. Mr. Henderson's warning echoed, "Strictly off limits. Do not go down there." I felt a prickle of unease just looking at it. Night 2 was worse. The scratching returned, but it wasn't alone. Around 2 a.m., a new sound joined it, a low rhythmic thumping. Thump, thump, thump. It came from directly below my room, the basement. It wasn't the sound of machinery or water. It was organic, heavy, like something large being dragged slowly across a floor, dragged, then lifted slightly, then dropped. Thump, dragging scrape. Thump. The scratching in the wall kept time with it, a frantic counterpoint. Scritch, scritch, thump, scritch, thump. I pressed my pillow over my ears, trembling. Sweat soaked through my t-shirt. This wasn't rats. This wasn't settling. This felt intentional, malicious. I got up, flicked on the light, and stood in the center of the room, breathing hard. The sounds stopped the moment. The light clicked on. Utter silence descended, heavier than before. I paced the small space, my bare feet cold on the worn floorboards. I checked the window, locked. The door, locked from the inside. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall where the scratching had been, then down at the floorboards where the thumping originated. The chemical smell seemed stronger in the darkness, acrid at the back of my throat. I didn't sleep again that night. I watched the windows slowly lighten from black to gray, the sounds not returning, but the memory of them vibrating in my bones. Exhaustion was a physical weight. When dawn finally came, my head throbbed. I felt hollowed out, scraped raw by fear and lack of sleep. Downstairs, the plate with toast and tea waited. I ate mechanically, the bread tasting like sawdust. The house felt watchful. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper, more defined. I noticed things I hadn't before. A dark stain on the hallway, floorboards near the basement door that looked like old oil, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration in the floor when I stood near the top of the stairs, as if something deep below was humming. Mr. Henderson remained invisible. I tried calling out, "Mr. Henderson, hello?" Only silence answered, thick and suffocating. The urge to pack my bag and flee was almost overwhelming, but where would I go? My bank account balance flashed in my mind, a number that induced panic. I had to last a month. I just had to endure the nights. I spent the day in the town library trying to research the house. The internet access was slow, glitchy. I found nothing specific about 17 Willowick Lane, just a vague mention in an old newspaper archive about a tragic incident in the neighborhood in the 1970s. No details. The librarian, a woman with kind eyes behind thick glasses, glanced at the address I'd written down, and her expression shuddered. "That old Henderson place? Best leave it. Bee, dear, things linger there." She wouldn't elaborate, turning back to her desk with a finality that discouraged further questions. Her words clung to me like cobwebs all the way back. Dusk fell early, casting long, distorted shadows across the overgrown lawn. The house looked different in the fading light. The boarded windows seemed like closed eyes, the sagging porch like a frowning mouth. The chemical smell hit me the moment I opened the front door. Stronger, sharper, almost like formaldehyde mixed with dust. It made my eyes water. I avoided looking at the basement door as I hurried upstairs. My room felt no safer. The flickering light bulb cast jumpy, leaping shadows that made the water stains on the walls writhe. I tried to read, but the words blurred. The silence was a physical pressure in my ears. I kept listening, breasting for the scratching, the thumping. Nothing came. That was almost worse. The anticipation was a wire tightening around my skull. I must have dozed, off sitting upright on the bed, the book slipping from my lap. I woke with a start to complete darkness. The bulb had finally given out. Moonlight, weak and watery, filtered through the grimy window, painting stripes across the floor. And then I heard it. Not scratching, not thumping. A sound I hadn't heard before, and one that froze the blood in my veins. It was a whisper, not from the wall, not from below, from the corner of the room, the darkest corner where the moonlight didn't reach. "Name," it breathed, a dry, papery sound, like dead leaves skittering on stone. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence with terrifying clarity. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My heart was a trapped bird in my chest. "What is your name?" The whisper came again, closer this time. I could feel the cold spot in the air where the voice originated, a pocket of frigid stillness near the dresser. Panic surged. I fumbled desperately on the bedside table for my phone, fingers clumsy with terror. The screen flared to life, blinding in the darkness. I swung the beam of light towards the corner. Empty. Just the shadowed corner, the dresser, the hook on the door. The whisper didn't stop. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around me like cold smoke. "Tell me your name." My name? Of course. Just tell it my name and it would go away. That's how these things worked, right? The thought was absurd, born of pure terror, but it felt like the only lifeline. I opened my mouth. "My name is—" I began. and stopped. It was gone. The name, the simple, fundamental word that was me, it evaporated from my mind like mist under a hot sun. I knew I had a name. I knew it was important, vital, but the specific sequence of letters, the sound, the identity it represented, it was simply absent. A blank space where my core should be. I stared at the phone screen, the bright light hurting my eyes. My reflection in the dark window pane looked back, pale, wide-eyed, a stranger. Who was that? Who was I? Name, the whisper urged. Closer still, it felt like icy fingers brushing the back of my neck. I could smell that chemical odor intensely now, mixed with the scent of old dust and something vaguely organic, like forgotten earth. Give it to me. I scrambled back on the bed, pressing myself against the headboard, the phone light shaking wildly in my hand. I tried to grasp the name. Images flickered, my mother's face, the layout of my childhood bedroom, the feel of my old dog's fur. But the name itself was a locked door. I couldn't find the key. A cold sweat broke out across my body. This wasn't fear anymore. This was dissolution. I was unraveling. Who are you? The whisper hissed, right beside my ear now. The cold spot pressed against my shoulder. The chemical smell was overwhelming, burning my nostrils. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen, flowing towards the bed like dark water. The moonlight stripes on the floor vanished as the darkness thickened, becoming tangible, suffocating. I opened my mouth again, a silent scream trapped in my throat. I reached for the only thing I could cling to, the memory of signing the lease, my hand, my signature. I remembered the pen scratching on the paper, the shape of the letters. I didn't know the name, but I remembered writing it. The muscle memory, the first letter, a tall one, with a loop, or was it straight? My mind scrabbled frantically in the void. James, John, Mark, none of them felt right. They were just sounds, empty vessels. The signature, it started with a curve, a capital letter, J, no, T, maybe. It swam just out of reach, dissolving like smoke every time I tried to grasp it. Yours is gone. The whisper sighed, a sound of terrible satisfaction. The cold spot enveloped my arm. I felt a numbness spreading, not just physical cold, but a draining of something essential. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering to the floor, its light extinguished. Pitch blackness crashed down. In the absolute dark, the sounds returned, not just the whisper. The scratching in the wall was frantic now, gouging deep. The thumping from below was a steady, heavy pounding, shaking the floorboards beneath me. Thump, thump, thump. And beneath it all, a new sound, a wet, rhythmic squelching, like something thick being pulled through mud. It came from the direction of the basement door. It was getting louder, closer. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even remember why I was supposed to be afraid. The terror was still there, a raw animal thing in my chest. But it had no anchor, no name, no past. Just the crushing darkness, the invading cold, the sounds of something dragging itself up the basement stairs, and the suffocating chemical stench that filled my lungs. The whisper wasn't asking any more. It was stating a fact over and over, a dry rustle in the dark that filled the hollow space where my name used to be. No name, no name, no name. The rhythmic squelching reached the top of the stairs. It paused outside my door. The cheap lock clicked, not turned, clicked. like a brittle bone snapping. The door creaked slowly open, revealing only deeper blackness in the hallway. The cold intensified, stealing my breath. The chemical smell became a physical force, thick and cloying, and the whisper, now seeming to come from the doorway, merged with the dragging, squelching sound just beyond the threshold. Come, now. No name. Come. I didn't resist. There was nothing left to resist with. No name to defend, no self to protect. Just the cold, the smell, the sound, and the waiting dark. I let the numbness take me. I let the void fill the space as the shape, indistinct, wet, and smelling of formaldehyde and earth, shuffled into the room, the last coherent thought that flickered and died was not fear, but a strange, hollow relief. The question was gone. The answer was gone. There was only the dark and the whisper and the dragging sound that was finally coming for the empty thing on the bed. I am no one. I am no one. I am no one. The thought repeated, a mantra in the crushing silence of my own erased mind, as the cold fingers, smelling of dust and chemicals and deep, undisturbed earth, closed around my wrist,